Hideyoshi Zankichi, an ordinary student constantly haunted by feelings of inferiority, is once again drawn into the world of Medaka Kurokami when he is asked to help the student council, an assembly of people who are anything but normal. From his perspective, Zankichi must struggle to survive amid a storm of ambition, extreme power, and absurd personalities, all while questioning his own worth in the face of Medaka's perfection. This story becomes Zankichi's inner journey, a tale of the courage to confront one's inadequacies and the determination to keep standing beside someone who is too perfect for an unfair world. Medaka was inaugurated as the 98th Student Council President of Hakoniwa High School. During the inauguration ceremony, she delivered a speech in front of all Hakoniwa High School students. In her address, she asked every student to freely share their opinions by submitting them through the suggestion box, encouraging them to write down any problems they were facing. Medaka also promised that she would respond to student concerns at any time throughout the year. She showed complete dedication to her role as student council president of Hakoniwa High School. A student named Han Sode admitted that he was impressed by Medaka's confident attitude during the speech, noting that she clearly seemed accustomed to speaking in front of large crowds. According to Zankichi, Medaka appeared more suited to standing above everyone rather than merely standing in front of them. As widely known, Medaka had won the election with 98% of the votes, leaving no doubt that she was the number one Sasae Izagi. Han Sode then wondered what Zankichi planned to do next and asked whether he would still join the student council. Zankichi refused, explaining that he did not want to be used by Medaka. Suddenly, Medaka forcefully grabbed Zankichi and pulled him away, leaving him completely startled. Habataki was confused by Zankichi's sudden disappearance. Hansode explained that Zankichi was currently with the student council president, which made Habataki curious about the true nature of the relationship between Medaka and Zankichi. Hansode described them as childhood friends who shared a strong and somewhat unhealthy bond. At the same time, Zankichi was with Medaka in the student council room. He questioned why Medaka did not approach him in a more normal way when asking him to come along. Medaka's behavior stemmed from Zankichi repeatedly rejecting her requests in the past. Zankichi admitted that he did not want to be involved in the heavy responsibilities Medaka carried, believing that she never truly considered his feelings or his position. He confessed that he had reached his limit and felt certain that Medaka could handle everything on her own. Medaka then acted in a way that deeply unsettled Zankichi by suddenly invading his personal space and behaving far more intimately than the situation required. She showed no sense of embarrassment, as she viewed their long-standing familiarity as justification. Medaka expressed her desire to always have Zankichi by her side, emphasizing that she relied on him more than anyone else. Medaka then shifted the conversation to the suggestion box, explaining her intention to resolve every problem submitted by the students. She took one letter from the box, which described concerns about the Kendo Hall being occupied by delinquent third-year students. The writer of the suggestion urged the student council to remove them as soon as possible. The Kendo Hall was one of the school's important facilities, a building filled with tradition and history. It had remained in use until the previous year, but the Kendo Club had been disbanded due to a lack of members. As a result, the hall had been left neglected and was now being used by third-year delinquents. Medaka and Zankichi immediately headed to the Kendo Hall, where they encountered a group of third-year delinquents. Medaka explained that she had come in response to a complaint submitted through the suggestion box. The leader of the delinquents, Mahibi, threatened Medaka by pointing a bamboo sword toward her. He showed no concern for Medaka's overwhelming 98% support from the student body, claiming that the remaining 2% belonged to his group. Mahibi was shocked when Medaka effortlessly seized the bamboo sword before he could even perceive her movement. Zankichi recognized the technique Medaka used as a disarming maneuver that was not meant to be used lightly. Frustrated, Mahibi ordered his followers to surround Medaka and Zankichi. Medaka calmly pointed out the numerous rule violations committed by the third-year delinquents, including inappropriate uniforms, excessive accessories, and dyed hair. With astonishing speed, she managed to confiscate all the cigarettes hidden in their pockets. Medaka advised them to quit smoking for the sake of their health. The delinquents were stunned by the speed of her movements, to the point that they believed she was using ninja techniques. In reality, Medaka was not using any special tricks, but rather advanced kendo footwork involving precise entry and retreat movements. At Medaka's level, these techniques appeared almost invisible to untrained eyes. Medaka reprimanded the delinquents for disrespecting and damaging school property. They reacted with resentment, unwilling to accept guidance from her. Medaka then described the delinquents as deeply pitiful, stating that they had tarnished the passion once held by true club members. She concluded that there was a logical explanation behind the unfortunate path they were heading toward, a path filled with misdirection and poor choices. Faced with Medaka's overwhelming presence, the delinquents began to feel insignificant. They admitted that they were nothing more than ordinary troublemakers who played around with wooden swords. The ability Medaka demonstrated at that moment was her talent for overwhelming those she perceived as morally and mentally weaker. She speculated that the third-year delinquents may have been neglected by their parents, failed to find proper guidance from a mentor, or been betrayed by friends in the past. Medaka reassured them that they did not need to worry, as she intended to rehabilitate all of them. She promised to train and guide them onto the true path of the sword. As part of her rehabilitation plan, Medaka subjected them to an intense and demanding training regimen consisting of 1,000 basic strikes. The third-year delinquents were completely unable to resist her authority or skill. After that, Zenkichi had lunch with Hansode in the cafeteria. Hansode felt curious about what was really going on in Zenkichi's head. She wondered why Zenkichi always seemed to get pulled into Medaka's world. Zenkichi explained that Medaka had always been unusual since they were little. He believed that Medaka did not realize that she stood far above everyone else, and because of that, she naturally ended up pushing the people around her to become just as capable as she was. Zenkichi felt sure that Medaka would never fully understand the feelings of people who genuinely tried their best but still failed, or the feelings of someone who felt sad without a clear reason. He was also convinced that the third-year delinquents would not return to the Kendo Hall after what they had gone through with Medaka. Hansode laughed after hearing this. In her view, even though Zenkichi and Medaka had been close for a long time, she believed that Zenkichi did not actually understand Medaka as well as he thought he did. She felt that if Medaka were that easy to understand, then Zenkichi would not have ended up dealing with so many problems. Zenkichi realized that if things did not come to an end soon, he might find himself in serious trouble. Hansode also informed him about the student council position elections that would take place after school. If all the student council positions were filled, then Medaka would no longer be able to pressure Zenkichi to get involved. Meanwhile, Zenkichi remained irritated by Hansode's comment that he did not understand Medaka. He felt that this was unfair since he had been with Medaka since the age of 2, which meant he should understand her better than anyone else. When he entered the Kendo Hall, Zenkichi was shocked to find the place clean and neatly organized. Medaka scolded him for arriving late, as she had been waiting for the third-year delinquents who were also supposed to come for practice. Zenkichi was certain that those delinquents would not show up. He believed they would never open their hearts to Medaka, even though she had cleaned the place, especially since they did not even know her personally. Medaka firmly stated that she was born to help people she did not know, and that she felt at ease once she had done something for others. Zenkichi remarked that if he had been blessed with talents like Medaka's, he might have chosen to live his life the same way. Still, he believed that someday Medaka would suffer if she continued like this, especially because those delinquents were not people who had chosen her, and they were only a small remainder of the student body. Medaka corrected him by saying that they were not a mere percentage, but 8 individuals. She admonished Zenkichi for comparing human beings to numbers or statistics. She then identified them as Mahibi, Hyusei, Mokyu, Mary, Seijaku, Nangi, Zen, and Konki. Medaka did not view those delinquents as outsiders to their school. Zenkichi, however, did not care and immediately left the Kendo Hall. Suddenly, he was taken aback when he saw the third-year delinquents arriving at the Kendo Hall after all. Mahibi stated that even if they were looked down upon by others, they were at least trying to improve themselves and no longer wanted to be seen as worthless. They made it clear to Medaka that they would not give up in the face of her challenge. Medaka acknowledged that she had accepted challenges from others before, and she expressed her intention to begin 10,000 kendo sword swings together with the third-year delinquents. After school, Zenkichi kept thinking that it seemed impossible for Medaka to need him again, since she always stood at the very top among everyone else. Medaka's extraordinary abilities and the way she lived her life were beyond doubt. Whether people felt envy or admiration toward her, in the end, everyone wanted to become like Medaka. Zenkichi believed that Medaka would continue forward without hatred, no matter how many painful difficulties she faced. Not long after, Zenkichi was unexpectedly struck from behind, which caused him to lose consciousness for a moment. The person responsible was Habataki, who felt confused and frustrated. He had previously asked the student council members to drive the delinquents away, yet instead, the situation had been treated as if it were merely a minor issue that needed cleaning up. Earlier that day, Medaka had been walking toward the student council room to attend a meeting for accepting new student council members. Hansode walked beside her and remarked that it seemed Zenkichi had no interest in joining the student council. Medaka asked whether Hansode was worried about him. Hansode denied it, saying that she knew exactly how capable Medaka was. She was simply curious about who had actually written the complaint regarding the Kendo Hall. Medaka stated that she did not know and did not wish to know. Hansode suspected that Habataki was the one who had submitted the complaint, as she believed he had a bad reputation and a history of problematic behavior during middle school. Unfortunately, Medaka did not pay any attention to that suspicion at all. Meanwhile, Habataki had already taken care of the troublemakers in the kendo hall, leaving Mahibi wondering who Habataki really was. Habataki introduced himself as a serious first-year student who genuinely practiced kendo. He admitted that he was not used to hierarchies or group dynamics. He also explained that he often clashed with seniors or supervising teachers in the past, which usually ended badly, and that was the reason he deliberately chose that school, so he could remain a solo kendo member. He openly stated that he did not like Mahibi and the others being in the kendo hall. Earlier, Mahibi had questioned Medaka about her goal in becoming the student council president. To him, Medaka did not seem like the typical type to hold that position. However, Medaka only wanted to keep looking far ahead into the future. At that moment, Eri had already begun to notice the hard work and dedication shown by Mahibi and the others. Mahibi then stood up and pushed Habataki, unable to accept the way Habataki spoke so carelessly. Mahibi recalled his own childhood as a kendo student, and the memories were not his alone. The others felt the same way, as they had all once dreamed of becoming skilled swordsmen. Habataki arrogantly dismissed them as failures. He prepared to make another move toward them, but Zenkichi suddenly arrived and stopped Habataki's kendo strike. Habataki accused Zenkichi of being in league with Medaka, but Zenkichi denied it. He explained that he had actually planned to let Habataki leave after dealing with the third-year delinquents. Habataki demanded that Zenkichi stop interfering, believing that his own actions were justified. Zenkichi acknowledged that Habataki had done something right, but he believed Medaka had acted even more rightly. Zenkichi was deeply convinced of this because, since the age of 2, he had already seen Medaka's strong sense of justice. He understood Medaka better than anyone else, even when her actions seemed irrational or beyond common sense. Zenkichi fully understood Medaka's noble nature and her desire to help others. He made it clear that he would not forgive anyone who refused to support Medaka's sense of justice. Habataki paid no attention to what Zenkichi said and prepared to attack him. However, Zenkichi moved quickly and struck Habataki, sending him flying and crashing to the ground. The confrontation ended with Habataki realizing just how tough Zenkichi really was. That afternoon, Habataki acknowledged Zenkichi's strength and initially intended to retaliate harshly. At that moment, Medaka appeared behind him and called him out. Habataki was shocked and broke down in tears, believing that Medaka should have been attending a student council meeting. Medaka explained that she had already arranged for Hansode to lead the meeting in her place. Medaka suspected that Zenkichi had already delivered enough consequences to Habataki. She expressed her gratitude, knowing that Zenkichi was the only one who consistently worried about her. Habataki felt as though Medaka was toying with him. Medaka then showed him a letter she had taken from the suggestion box. The letter contained a request from a student asking the student council to correct a classmate with a bad attitude. Habataki immediately realized that Hansode must have written it. Medaka stated that Habataki had been led astray because he lacked love and support. She then gave Habataki a firm punishment to ensure he would reflect on his actions. After the incident, Mahibi and the others resumed practicing kendo together, with the club now operating under Habataki's guidance. Medaka placed flowers as decorations after successfully resolving the student issue. Zenkichi was surprised to see that Medaka also had a gentle, feminine side. Medaka confidently believed that she would never fail, as she always trusted that her room would be filled with flowers. Zenkichi asked whether Medaka could truly manage everything, especially since she had failed to recruit new student council members after leaving the meeting the day before. Medaka brushed it off, explaining that she only wanted to do everything together with Zenkichi. Zenkichi was puzzled by why Medaka always wanted him by her side, considering that he was merely her childhood friend and that others might see him as an outsider. Medaka believed that Zenkichi understood her better than anyone else, and the feeling was mutual. More than that, Zenkichi had been the only one who continued to worry about her from the time she was 2 years old until now. Medaka was convinced that she could help others as long as Zenkichi stayed beside her. Hearing this, Zenkichi asked to join the student council as a member. Nervously but sincerely, he stated that he would help turn the school into a field of flowers by continuing to dedicate himself to supporting the students. Medaka felt genuinely happy that Zenkichi finally accepted the role and thanked him by hugging him tightly. Zenkichi was startled by how affectionate Medaka could be, but he resolved to stay by her side because he truly loved her. Medaka then assigned Zenkichi the position of general assistant, the lowest rank in the student council, and encouraged him to work hard to rise through the ranks. It had already been a week since Zenkichi volunteered to become a member of the student council, yet he still did not feel confident wearing the student council uniform. Zenkichi felt out of place in dark-colored clothing, even though he had deliberately chosen to enroll at Hakoniwa High School. Medaka, on the other hand, thought that Zenkichi actually looked good in darker outfits. Zenkichi was startled when he noticed Medaka suddenly standing behind him. Medaka suggested that he wear a jacket underneath his blazer. Zenkichi followed her suggestion, and it turned out that the jacket really did make him look cooler. Medaka then reminded Zenkichi that his responsibility was to check the suggestion box. That task was considered a top priority for the student council, so Medaka told him not to slack off. One of the requests was signed, and the name written on it was Aria from class 2 to 9. Aria later came to the student council room to meet Medaka. She admitted that she was not sure whether her problem was something that needed to be brought to the student council. Medaka reassured her not to feel hesitant, since she accepted requests from anyone. Zenkichi felt confused seeing Medaka speak so casually to an upperclassman. Aria, meanwhile, was puzzled by Zenkichi wearing a jacket underneath his blazer. Aria explained that she had received a letter demanding that she leave the track and field club, and on top of that, her running shoes had been damaged. She said that she had been selected to represent the school in an upcoming track competition, something that rarely happened for second-year students. She had been extremely happy about it, but 3 days earlier she discovered her damaged shoes along with that letter. Zenkichi asked whether there was anyone Aria suspected. Aria admitted that she did not know, since she kept her shoes in a locker, and anyone could have done it. She also felt that everyone seemed suspicious. Competition for a spot on Hakoniwa High School's main team was incredibly intense, so it was not surprising if others held resentment toward her after she was chosen. Aria had prepared herself mentally for possible backlash, but she never expected it to go that far. She said she could not report it to the coach, and she could not continue training alongside someone who treated her that way. She felt unable to trust anyone. Overwhelmed by stress, Aria broke down and confessed that she had been unable to sleep at night. Medaka told Aria to calm down and promised that she would help bring the situation to an end. She assured Aria that she would uncover who was responsible. Zenkichi never imagined that sports clubs could have such a dark side. From the fact that the trouble involved members of the main team, Medaka concluded that the culprit was most likely a female student. She believed the person had been in the track club for a long time, was talented at running, was a fan of a famous running shoe brand, was left-handed, regularly read the Fuguruma newspaper, and lived in Block 23. Zenkichi was stunned by how specific her deductions were. Medaka explained that the shoes had been damaged with scissors and done carefully, without leaving even a scratch on the logo. From that, she concluded that the culprit liked the shoe brand. The cuts were made with the left hand, and there was also a clipped line from the Fuguruma newspaper attached to the back of the letter. When Zenkichi asked how Medaka knew the culprit lived in Block 23, she explained that newspapers sometimes varied by distribution area depending on the printing day. The newspaper used for the note was from Week 14's edition, which was distributed specifically in Block 23. Zenkichi realized just how unsettling Medaka's deductive skills could be. Medaka deeply despised anyone who sabotaged another person's hard work, and she was clearly on the verge of anger, ready to take action herself. After that, Zenkichi told Hansode about everything, and the two of them decided to look for the culprit. Hansade revealed that she suspected Isagi, a third-year student and a member of the track club. Isagi specialized in running just like Aria, was left-handed, and wore the same brand of running shoes that had been damaged. Hansode also knew that Isagi's family had subscribed to the Fuguruma newspaper for 3 years and that Isagi lived in Block 23. Hearing all of this, Zenkichi was completely bewildered by how Hansode managed to gather such detailed information. Hansade simply told him that he did not need to know. Hansode also knew that Isagi had failed to secure a spot on the main team after Aria was selected. Zenkichi suspected that Isagi might have acted out because her pride as a senior had been hurt when she was replaced by a junior. Medaka believed that they should not label someone as a wrongdoer without solid evidence. Zenkichi admired Medaka's strong ideals, though he felt that collecting more evidence was unnecessary. At the same time, he knew they could not confront Isagi indirectly forever. Unexpectedly, Medaka went straight to Isagi and asked whether she was responsible for damaging the running shoes. Isagi was shocked and immediately ran away. Zenkichi hurried after her, but at that very moment, Hansode suddenly asked why he was wearing a jacket underneath his blazer. Meanwhile, Isagi felt panicked and kept running at full speed. She could not understand how Medaka had figured things out so quickly. To her surprise, Medaka began closing the distance. Isagi's face was filled with anxiety as she explained that she could run 100 meters in 12 seconds. Medaka calmly responded that her own average time for the same distance was 11 seconds. Isagi had no idea what to do and even climbed a fence to escape Medaka's pursuit. Isagi knew that Medaka was the new student council president at Hakoniwa High School, someone rumored to have corrected the behavior of delinquent members in the Kendo Club almost immediately after taking office. Isagi was terrified, convinced that if Medaka ever discovered the full truth, the consequences would be extremely severe for her. Medaka then leaped into the air to surpass Isagi's running speed, and before long, she landed directly in front of Isagi. Medaka once again asked whether Isagi was truly responsible. Isagi denied it, saying that she had not damaged Aria's shoes with scissors and had not written a letter telling Aria to leave. Without realizing it, Isagi ended up revealing everything herself. Suddenly, Isagi nearly lost her balance, and Medaka immediately caught her. Medaka apologized for interrupting Isagi's training and said she was sure Isagi practiced seriously every day, since her running speed had been impressive. Medaka admitted that she admired people who were willing to work hard. Isagi was still confused by Medaka's attitude and wondered if Medaka simply did not know how to accuse someone properly. Zenkichi explained that it was not that Medaka did not understand how to accuse others, but that she understood how to trust people instead. Isagi then wondered why Zenkichi was wearing a jacket underneath his school blazer. Zenkichi was surprised by the reaction, since he had hoped it would make him look cool. Zenkichi reflected that during middle school, his role had been to deal with problems that could not be resolved through normal means, but in high school, his duties were limited to managing the suggestion box. This time, he chose to do what Medaka asked and decided to trust that Isagi would not repeat her mistake. After that, Isagi quietly reflected on her own actions. Zenkichi could not understand why no one praised his stylish appearance. Aria suddenly appeared and startled him, then told him that his look was cool and unique. Aria explained that her shoes had disappeared from her locker, but in their place she had found an apology letter along with a new pair of running shoes. With the issue resolved, Zenkichi thought Medaka would finally be able to rest easy. Unexpectedly, Medaka was still concerned about the person who had taken Aria's damaged shoes. Zenkichi was shocked that even a genius like Medaka could sometimes overlook simple things. The suggestion box introduced by the new student council president at Hakoniwa High School soon became known as the Medaka box and quickly received positive responses. That day, Zenkichi found 3 requests inside. He realized just how many people at the school were dealing with problems, and this time the requests seemed stranger than usual. Zenkichi immediately went to Medaka and reported that the requests included a complaint from the basketball team about their club room, a proposal to create a new lunch menu, and a request to find a missing dog. Medaka was especially interested in the request about the dog. It seemed that the writer of the letter had been separated from their pet somewhere on campus during winter break. Medaka immediately assigned Zenkichi the task of finding the dog. She did not join him, since she could not handle being around animals. Zenkichi eventually asked Hansode to help. Hansode was surprised to learn that the seemingly perfect Medaka also had a weakness. Zenkichi explained that during grade school, Medaka had experienced something that left her uncomfortable with caring for animals, which was why Zenkichi would step in whenever she could not. Zenkichi was full of enthusiasm about finding the dog, but Hansode commented that his excitement looked unpleasant rather than admirable. Before long, they found the dog, although it looked quite intimidating. Its fur matched the picture shown in the letter. Zenkichi was confused, since the image had made it look like a cute dog separated from its owner, and he had imagined it belonging to a wealthy family or being some kind of protected animal. Hansode explained that the Borzoi was a respected breed, also known as the Russian Wolfhound. Zenkichi asked Hansode to help him approach the dog, but she refused, saying she preferred to watch from a safe distance. She even planned to take photos of Zenkichi's bravery. Soon, the dog barked after being disturbed from its sleep. Hansode casually suggested that the barking meant the dog wanted to play. Zenkichi did not believe that interpretation, knowing the dog was simply annoyed at being awakened. Hansode encouraged Zenkichi by saying this was his chance to show his courage in front of Medaka. Fired up, Zenkichi prepared to catch the dog. Hansode handed him a sausage. Zenkichi assumed it was meant to lure the dog, but Hansode jokingly suggested he place it on his stomach and pretend he was injured. Even Zenkichi could tell that following such advice would only make the situation worse, so he decided to rely on his own common sense instead. Zenkichi immediately ran toward the dog while holding a sausage. The dog opened its eyes and suddenly turned around, chasing after him. Zenkichi ran as fast as he could to save himself, but the dog managed to catch him. Meanwhile, Hansode was calmly recording the frightening incident instead of helping. After that, Zenkichi reported to Medaka that he and Hansode had managed to locate the target but failed to capture it. It turned out that after disappearing for 6 months, the puppy had grown into an extremely aggressive dog. Zenkichi admitted that he had already met the dog's owner, Urushi, from the 3rd year of high school, but explaining the situation to her was not easy. Zenkichi later learned that Borzoi in Russian refers to a clever breed that was originally used as a hunting dog. Only then did he realize why he had failed to catch it. He admitted that he would not give up just because he failed on the first attempt, and he planned to take further action together with Hansode. Medaka was confused about why Hansode had to be involved. According to Zenkichi, Hansode might not be happy about going along with him, but he believed she would cooperate if he pushed her a little. Zenkichi added that Hansode was someone he could rely on. Medaka had already completed 2 other requests and wanted to personally step in to deal with the dog. She could not accept the fact that Zenkichi had asked for help from someone else because of his own shortcomings. Medaka then put on a dog-themed outfit that was meant to help her blend in rather than stand out. Hansode wondered why Medaka was wearing something like that. Medaka's goal was to make the target see her as the same kind of creature, which she believed was the first step in dealing with animals. Hansode was surprised by this logic, while Zenkichi commented that Medaka could be foolish precisely because she was too smart. Medaka prepared to carry out her plan, but Zenkichi suggested that she step back and let him and Hansode handle the situation instead. Medaka became clearly upset after hearing that. She wanted to prove that she would no longer be held back by her past. Zenkichi was puzzled by Medaka's sudden burst of motivation. According to Hansode, Medaka seemed to be jealous after seeing Zenkichi acting closer to her. Hansode realized that Medaka was far more human than she had initially thought, showing clumsiness, jealousy, and even having trouble with animals. Zenkichi corrected Hansode's misunderstanding by explaining that Medaka did not dislike animals at all. In fact, she genuinely loved them. Just as he said, Medaka approached the dog and tried to hug it, but the dog looked terrified and hid behind Zenkichi instead. Hansode could not understand what was really happening. Zenkichi concluded that it was not that Medaka could not handle animals, but rather that animals could not handle Medaka. Back when Medaka was in the first year of grade school, she had once been assigned to take care of the school's animals. When she tried to feed the rabbits, none of them came out of their cages. The fish also refused to swim to the surface when she gave them food. Even during a visit to the zoo, not a single animal showed itself in front of her. That experience had stayed with her ever since. Animals do not understand personality in the way humans do, but they can sense presence and extraordinary intensity. According to Zenkichi, the reason the students accepted Medaka as the student council president had nothing to do with her power, abilities, or status, but everything to do with her personality. In the end, the student council successfully completed the task of returning the Borzoi to its owner. Medaka looked gloomy because, even after everything, she still could not make such an adorable dog like her. Seeing that, Zenkichi realized once again that Medaka was truly human, someone who genuinely liked animals and could feel deeply disappointed when things did not go the way she hoped. One day, Zenkichi was training in boxing at his high school. Everyone around him paid close attention to his movements as he practiced. The boxing coach warned Zenkichi to use proper boxing gloves so his hands would not get injured. The coach praised Zenkichi's technique, saying it was impressive, and expressed hope that he would officially join the boxing club. However, another student stepped in and explained that Zenkichi was a member of the student council. That student seemed regretful and commented that if Zenkichi had not stayed so closely connected to Medaka, his overall standing might have been much higher. Later that day, Zenkichi had lunch with Habataki and Hansode. He had already visited several martial arts sports clubs by then. Habataki was puzzled by how dedicated Zenkichi had become, especially since he believed Zenkichi did not actually like sports. Zenkichi explained that he simply created his own rule for himself so he could sweat up to 5 liters every day. Hearing that, Hansode casually remarked that she would have to eat 5 liters of ramen daily to keep up. Habataki then mentioned that there was a rumor going around that Zenkichi was considered a club destroyer. Zenkichi smiled and asked whether Habataki was worried about him, which Habataki immediately denied. Zenkichi found it strange that Habataki was having lunch with him as if they were close friends. Suddenly, a student named Hisu approached Zenkichi and asked him to come along, saying there was something important he needed to talk about. Meanwhile, Habataki commented that Hidemi seemed to be doing fine and wondered whether Zenkichi would also be alright. Hansode was confident that Zenkichi would be just fine and added that Zenkichi was the kind of friend who only showed up when she needed him. Habataki admitted that he himself was not exactly a good person, but he described Hansode as far worse. Hansode believed that Zenkichi would not have any trouble dealing with Hisu. Hisu was known as a former candidate for student council president. He had tried to gather votes through intimidation in the past, but Medaka ultimately defeated him. Habataki suspected that Hisu deeply resented Medaka, and Hansode felt that Hisu was probably planning something reckless. While looking through Zenkichi's notes, Hansoda noticed that he had not yet visited the judo club. At the same time, Hishu and Zenkichi were talking on the school rooftop. Hishu revealed that he wanted Zenkichi to help bring Medaka down. He was trying to gather supporters and attempted to persuade Zenkichi to join him. Zenkichi responded that Hishu had approached the wrong person. Hishu denied this, arguing that Zenkichi's position in the student council was nothing more than a general assistant, and that, in reality, Zenkichi was merely serving Medaka without recognition. Hishu also mentioned that he had heard about Zenkichi's recent behavior and believed it was nothing more than a way for him to release stress. He insisted that Zenkichi must be exhausted from following Medaka's requests every single day without receiving anything in return. Hishu claimed that Medaka had won the election through sheer force of personality, and therefore he believed it was justified to challenge her through similar means. Zenkichi countered by pointing out that Hishu's actions had frightened the students who were supposed to vote freely. Hishu then told Zenkichi to stop acting overly righteous, insisting that he was actually trying to help him. He said he did not want a hardworking young man like Zenkichi to be taken advantage of by Medaka and believed there had to be something more meaningful that Zenkichi could be doing. Zenkichi did not understand what else Hishu was referring to. Hishu explained that there would be a meeting after school and claimed it would be Zenkichi's last chance to switch sides. He was confident that Medaka would not care even if Zenkichi betrayed her. After saying this, Hishu left him alone. Zenkichi let out a deep sigh and lay back, feeling certain that all of this would become extremely troublesome. Suddenly, Medaka appeared nearby and commented that it would not be troublesome at all, but rather enjoyable. Zenkichi was startled and wondered how long Medaka had been there. It turned out that she had been present for quite some time. Zenkichi pointed out that there were people who truly disliked Medaka. Medaka did not see this as a problem, explaining that her purpose in life was not to be loved by others, but instead to love them herself. She believed that this was not something Zenkichi needed to worry about and that she would handle it on her own, as it was the responsibility of someone in power to deal with opposition. Zenkichi was genuinely surprised to learn that Medaka even cared about her enemies. While receiving 98% of the votes sounded impressive, it also meant that 2% of the students had rejected her. The election itself proved that there were indeed people who stood firmly against Medaka. Meanwhile, Hishu was secretly planning a rebellion with his friends. They prepared makeshift tools from wood and nails, but Hishu felt their supplies were still not enough. He repeatedly struck the wooden pieces against a table to sharpen the nail tips, showing how serious he was about the plan. One of his friends warned him that his actions were going too far. Even if Medaka was often described as overwhelming, she was still a girl and a fellow student. Hishu lashed out at them instead, insisting that Medaka was not some small monster but more like an unstoppable force. He even demanded to know whether anyone understood Medaka's weaknesses. They had heard rumors that she was weak against animals, but that idea quickly fell apart because Medaka was known to keep a dog. Hishu angrily blamed his friends for his failure in the student council president election, saying they were the reason he had not been chosen. Not long after that, Zenkichi suddenly appeared. Hishu welcomed him with excitement, but Zenkichi immediately knocked away all of their prepared tools, sending them flying and embedding harmlessly above them. Hishu was stunned by Zenkichi's actions. Zenkichi calmly explained that even if Hishu and the others carried out their plan, they would never be able to hurt Medaka. Zenkichi refused to stand by and do nothing. He understood that Medaka was capable of handling almost anything on her own, but he personally could not ignore the situation. He agreed with Hishu on one point, that there was something he himself could do, and he chose to become someone who could protect Medaka. Enraged, Hishu tried to strike Zenkichi with a wooden piece, but Zenkichi dodged instantly. Before Hishu could act again, Zenkichi knocked him aside, leaving him unable to continue. Hishu's friends became frightened, and Zenkichi instructed them to spread a rumor that Medaka, the student council president, had a guard dog by her side. That way, the student council members would start moving for their own personal reasons rather than through open conflict. Elsewhere, the judo club members were in the middle of their training. They believed that Zenkichi, known for shutting down clubs, would never dare show up there, especially since the judo team was made up of top-level national competitors. One of the members, Nekami, wondered why Zenkichi had been destroying other clubs in the first place. Koki commented that Zenkichi was probably just venting his personal frustration. He added that someone who relied only on physical presence, like Zenkichi, did not belong beside Medaka. Nekami was surprised that Koki spoke so confidently about this. Koki claimed that Zenkichi was insignificant compared to Medaka, whom he saw as something precious to himself. Around the same time, Medaka had prepared a welcoming event for the supposed rebels, but no one showed up. That afternoon, Isagi and Ariya were running toward their training area. Isagi urged Ariya to hurry so they would not be late. Aria was confused because Izagi had waited for her to finish changing earlier and asked why Izagi had been acting so kind to her lately. Izagi brushed it off and ran ahead, but she accidentally collided with Koki as he passed by. Fortunately, Koki caught Izagi before she fell. Izagi was startled to realize that Koki was holding her steady. Koki gently reminded her to be more careful. Izagi apologized and found herself momentarily captivated by Koki's calm presence. After Koki left, Aria came over, and Izagi asked if Aria knew who he was. Aria explained that he was Koki from class 2 to 11, widely known among second-year students as the Prince of Judo. Later that day, Medaka invited Zenkichi to visit the judo club with her. When Zenkichi noticed that Medaka was dressed in an inappropriate and careless way for a public setting, he scolded her and told her to change into proper clothes. Medaka did not understand why he was so upset, as she thought it was harmless, but Zenkichi insisted on basic decency. Around that time, a request arrived in the suggestion box from Nekami, the judo club captain. Zenkichi recognized her as a member of the famous special team, often known for her intense style. Nekami was about to step down from her position and asked the student council to help choose her successor, which meant they had to come in person. Zenkichi realized that this was exactly why he had been avoiding the judo club. When they arrived, Nekami greeted them enthusiastically and formally introduced herself as the judo captain. Medaka immediately said that she would help. Nekami admitted that she was struggling to find a suitable replacement. Zenkichi sensed that something about Nekami felt unusual. Suddenly, Nekami mentioned that someone wanted to greet Medaka and then called Koki over. Koki approached Medaka with great respect and courtesy, but Medaka quickly told him that such formality was unnecessary and did not suit him. Koki explained that he felt no embarrassment and simply wanted to express his gratitude to her. Medaka gently corrected his posture and encouraged him to stand confidently. She then explained that she had come to the judo club as part of her duties as student council president, specifically to help select a new leader for the club. Medaka then suggested that Koki spend some time talking with Zenkichi, sensing that there was something the two of them needed to discuss privately. Koki immediately approached Zenkichi, and it was obvious that the two of them deeply disliked each other. Koki scolded Zenkichi, blaming him for being the reason Medaka did not receive a perfect 100% of the votes. Zenkichi felt certain that all of Koki's fans would be heartbroken if they ever found out that their beloved judo prince had mocked someone from a lower grade. Koki firmly stated that both his body and soul belonged only to Medaka, so he was willing to accept insults and even be seen as a dangerous presence for her sake. Since their middle school days, Koki had always liked Medaka and despised Zenkichi. Medaka had already gained many admirers back then, although none were as devoted as Koki. At that time, Medaka announced that she would test the judo skills of every club member, asking them to step forward and challenge her directly. Everyone was stunned by her declaration. Nekami laughed and remarked that Medaka seemed to be underestimating the long history of their judo club. Koki asked Nekami not to blame Medaka, believing that only he and Nekami were capable of standing up to her. Betsue, the vice captain of the judo club, then volunteered to face Medaka, claiming that he was the most suitable person to step in. Betsue moved forward with the intention of restraining Medaka in close combat, but she reacted instantly and threw him to the mat. He was defeated in a single move. Medaka confidently stated that she would defeat everyone present. Koki finally realized just how incredible she truly was, noting that Medaka had continued to shine brighter since their middle school days. Nekami then asked for Zenkichi's opinion about Medaka. Zenkichi explained that since their second year, Medaka's abilities had already been on a monster-like level, so what had just happened was not surprising to him at all. Nekami laughed again and said she felt the same way. Many people called Medaka a genius monster, but Nekami believed that Medaka was simply doing what she was capable of. To Nekami, what Medaka did was no more impossible than walking on two legs. Instead, Nekami found it remarkable that someone like Zenkichi could keep up with a monster like Medaka. Hearing that, Zenkichi became visibly nervous. He admitted that he had never intended to stay by Medaka's side, but Medaka was the one who kept dragging him along everywhere. He also explained that Medaka was the reason he had been forced to join the student council. From this, Koki concluded that Zenkichi had not joined the student council of his own free will. He then asked whether he could take Zenkichi's position instead, making it clear that he was completely serious. Up until that point, Koki had endured every joke out of respect for Medaka, but he felt that someone like Zenkichi had crossed a line. Koki looked down on Zenkichi, seeing him as someone weak who hid behind others and believing that Zenkichi should learn to stand on his own. Zenkichi strongly rejected that idea, arguing that he was at least capable of protecting Medaka from inappropriate attention. As their argument grew louder, Nakomi stepped in between them and told them to stop fighting, reminding them that they were inside a sacred judo dojo. Nakomi added that although Zenkichi had not destroyed the judo club, she was certain that he had received proper judo training. She suggested that Kaoki and Zenkichi settle their dispute through a judo match. Both of them were shocked by the proposal. Nakomi explained that if Kaoki managed to defeat Zenkichi, the two of them would switch roles. Kaoki would join the student council, while Zenkichi would enter the judo club and take over Nakomi's position as captain. Zenkichi wondered whether this had been Nakomi's intention when she submitted her request in the suggestion box. Nakomi admitted that it was, adding that she genuinely admired men who fought with determination like Zenkichi. Zenkichi was left stunned by her words. Meanwhile, Medaka had already defeated every remaining member of the judo club. That day, Zenkichi was set to compete in a judo match against Kaoki. Nakomi explained that the match would follow Kaoki's team's standard judo rules, with no time limit. The scoring system was 10 points to 1, meaning that if Zenkichi managed to earn a single point before Kaoki reached 10 points, then Sasae would be considered the winner. Kaoki mentioned that he respected Zenkichi for not running away, comparing him to a creature that stubbornly held its ground, even though he believed that insects were never meant to have tails in the first place. Zenkichi responded by implying that Kaoki should have been honest from the beginning about wanting to run freely like an ant. Medaka then stated that the student council would never run away because the student council accepted every request and challenge regardless of the purpose, circumstances, difficulties, or reasons behind them. According to her, that was simply how the Hakoniwa High School Student Council carried out its responsibilities. Medaka warned Zenkichi that he was not allowed to lose and was not allowed to run away either. Nakomi laughed at that remark and commented that the student council president could be quite strict when she wanted to be. Nakomi then told Zenkichi to follow her final instruction, expressing strong confidence that Kaoki would eventually join the student council while Zenkichi would end up joining the judo club. After Nakomi gave the signal, the match officially began. Zenkichi quickly realized that Kaoki was part of a special team as an elite judo athlete, which meant Kaoki could not be defeated using ordinary methods. Because of that, Zenkichi planned to end the match as quickly as possible and launched his first attack. Unfortunately, before his move even reached Kaoki, Kaoki swiftly threw Zenkichi to the mat. Kaoki acknowledged that he did not mean to dismiss Zenkichi's efforts. On the contrary, he respected Zenkichi for continuing to challenge him, even if that determination only amounted to effort rather than results. Kaoki then told Zenkichi to stand up again, stating that he still needed 9 more points. He was determined to overwhelm Zenkichi in front of Medaka and force a clear defeat. Nakomi observed that Kaoki seemed extremely energized. In her view, if Kaoki ever got the chance to counterattack, he would be capable of defeating almost anyone. She also remarked that watching a judo genius was not very interesting to her. At that moment, Kaoki once again threw Zenkichi to the ground. Medaka commented that it seemed Nakomi truly disliked prodigies. Nakomi admitted this openly, stating that she disliked both Kaoki and Medaka because the kind of judo she valued prioritized hard work over natural talent. Medaka realized that this way of thinking reflected a very different perspective. Nakomi went on to say that talented people should stay among themselves, while ordinary people should remain together as well. She explained that she did not need Kaoki in the judo club and was willing to let Medaka have him instead, as long as she could take Zenkichi in return. During this exchange, Zenkichi was thrown to the ground repeatedly by Kaoki. Medaka noted that the label of genius no longer seemed meaningful. By that point, Kaoki had already earned 7 points. Members of the judo club commented that Kaoki was fighting seriously, without relying on chance or luck like in some other martial arts. They believed that a beginner could not realistically challenge or face Kaoki head-on. Nakomi then recalled how she had once defeated prodigies by using clever and unconventional strategies. She accepted the possibility of Zenkichi losing that match and believed that if he trained with her for 6 months, he would be able to defeat Kaoki. In judo matches, it was extremely difficult for beginners to avoid breaking the rules, yet even as a novice, Zenkichi continued to fight with everything he had. Meanwhile, Kaoki acknowledged that Zenkichi possessed remarkable courage. He genuinely respected Zenkichi's persistence, especially since most of Kaoki's opponents were unable to stand after enduring 9 of his attacks. Kaoki thought that someone like Zenkichi might still change and grow over time. He then prepared a final decisive move to remove Zenkichi as an obstacle standing beside Medaka. Zenkichi felt that he truly could not match Kaoki's strength, and he had no idea how he could possibly win. He thought that Medaka should never have dragged him into a battle he could not overcome. Still, he did not resent her, even if she cared more about her duties in the student council than about him. Zenkichi had already accepted the possibility that Kaoki might replace him. Suddenly, Medaka declared that she would never, under any circumstances, tell Zenkichi to lose. she desperately urged him to win, explaining that she did not know what she would do if he was no longer by her side. She believed she would end up in trouble and unable to hold back her emotions. Hearing this, Zankichi felt a surge of motivation because he could not bear the thought of Medaka being upset. With renewed determination, Zankichi pushed both of Kaoki's legs, causing him to fall. The spectators were stunned, wondering how Zankichi had managed to perform a double leg takedown. Not long after that, Zankichi collapsed himself due to exhaustion. Despite this, Kaoki acknowledged his defeat at Zankichi's hands. Zankichi smiled when he heard those words. Nakomi still found it hard to believe that Zankichi had managed to defeat Kaoki. She had used that same technique many times before, yet Zankichi's execution had been especially impressive. Medaka stated that there was nothing particularly impressive or disappointing about it, and that there were no geniuses or ordinary people in that moment. In her view, all that existed was people doing their best to survive. She added that this meant there was no real difference between Nakomi and herself. After the match ended, Kaoki supported Zankichi's body and helped him stand. The next day, Zankichi explained what had happened to Hansode. Hansode said that Zankichi had gone through something extremely heavy and that he should have asked her for help. She then asked about the candidate to replace the judo club captain. Betsue had been appointed as the new judo captain because he was considered brave enough to challenge Medaka. Nakomi stopped trying to recruit Zankichi, and the other related cases were also resolved. According to Hansode, it would be best if Zankichi simply hoped that Nakomi would give up on recruiting him altogether. Hansode then asked about Kaoki, but Zankichi said that Kaoki did not know anything because the matter had nothing to do with him. When Zankichi entered the student council room, he was shocked to see Kaoki inside, dressed in an unusual way that immediately caught his attention. Zankichi was confused about what Kaoki was doing there. Kaoki admitted that he had stopped pursuing Zankichi, but he could not completely cut ties with Medaka. On top of that, Nakomi had already dismissed him because she did not intend to keep someone she believed to be stronger than the new judo captain. Kaoki admitted that he had never thought of himself as a genius. At first, he had stood out, but reaching that point had required hard work and strong determination. Nakomi asked whether Kaoki was finally admitting that the idea of a natural-born genius did not really exist, and she encouraged him to use his effort and resolve to chase the girl he admired. Nakomi had also discussed the matter with Medaka, and Kaoki was now free to join the student council or any club he wanted. Kaoki felt that he had failed to keep his promise to Zankichi. Nakomi told him that if he truly did not see himself as a genius, then he needed to decide whether he would honor that promise or follow his feelings. Kaoki ended up in tears. Before leaving, Nakomi asked him to pass a message to Zankichi, saying that she would not give up so easily. Shortly after that, Kaoki announced that starting that day, he would be joining the student council as its secretary. Zankichi was genuinely irritated when he heard this. From that day on, the Hakoniwa High School Student Council officially had 3 members. That same day, Zankichi was watering the flowers in the student council room. The number of flower pots had increased so much that some of them clearly needed to be moved outside. Zankichi never expected that simply carrying out student council duties would result in the room being filled with flowers. He admitted to himself that Medaka really could turn the entire school into a field of blossoms. Not long after, Kaoki arrived at the student council room and greeted Zankichi. Kaoki used to see Zankichi as a dangerous presence, but after watching him carefully tend to the flowers, he now thought of him as someone surprisingly beneficial. Zankichi was puzzled by Kaoki's choice of outfit. Kaoki smiled and explained that he was following Medaka's example in every way, including adopting a bold and unconventional style. Zankichi was left completely stunned by that reasoning. Kaoki then wondered why Medaka had not arrived yet. It turned out that Medaka had gone out to pick up the person responsible for managing the suggestion boxes. Zankichi admitted that student council duties felt overwhelmingly demanding, so he told Kaoki that he should say so if he ever wanted to resign. Kaoki, however, made it clear that quitting was not an option for him. Later, Medaka invited Kana, a third-year student, to explain her request. At that moment, Zankichi found his attention drifting to Medaka's summer uniform. Kana explained that she simply hoped Medaka would write a letter for her. She had been captivated by the beautiful handwriting on the posters Medaka created. Zankichi acknowledged that Medaka's handwriting was indeed famous. Back in 3rd grade at grade school, Medaka had studied under a renowned calligrapher, although that teacher had been forced to resign after only 3 months. Kana admitted that she struggled with poor handwriting and wanted Medaka to write the letter on her behalf. Medaka did not mind helping, but she assigned Kaoki to take on the task and asked him to handle it with full responsibility. Kaoki promised that he would do so. After reading Kana's written request, Zankichi agreed that her handwriting was far from neat. He believed there would be no problem if Kaoki handled the task, but Medaka pointed out that the real issue was that it seemed too easy. Kana then shyly admitted that she wanted Kalki to write a love letter for her. She realized that it might seem strange, especially since she was known as a tomboy, but she had still fallen in love. This reminded Kalki of how Medaka had never responded to his own confession. Even so, he promised to help Kana and said he would create something wonderful that could win over anyone's heart. Kana was shocked by his confidence and decided to rely on him completely. Meanwhile, Zenkichi was spending time with Hansode in the school's back courtyard. Hansode explained that Kana was famous for being a tough, tomboyish girl. She would rather leave a classroom through a window than take the stairs, and if something got in her way, she would not hesitate to break through it. Zenkichi commented that this sounded less like toughness and more like recklessness. Hansode admitted that she did not know how good Kalki's handwriting really was, but she was certain it would not match Medaka's. She wondered why Medaka had entrusted the task to Kalki. Hansode understood that Medaka might simply want Kalki to gain experience, but she felt that Kana was being used as a test subject, which seemed out of character for someone who usually cared so deeply about others. Zenkichi admitted that Hansode had a point, but he believed that Medaka would never stop giving new members opportunities to grow. He was convinced that Medaka would not recruit anyone who would hinder her work. At the same time, he believed that while Medaka would always help those who were facing problems, she would not step in to save those who refused to stand up for themselves. Not long after that, Kalki handed over the love letter he had written to Medaka, so she could review it again. He explained that it had been a difficult assignment, since it was his first time writing a romantic letter from a woman's point of view, but he still believed the letter turned out beautifully. Medaka asked whether Kalki had written the contents himself. He admitted that he had and then asked for her opinion, since he planned to give the letter to Kana soon. Medaka questioned whether Kana's goal was simply to pass along words or to express genuine feelings, and if Kalki had used his own wording, whose feelings were actually being conveyed. She clarified that there was no misunderstanding involved, because Kana had not asked for help, but made a request instead, which created a problem that did not need to exist in the first place. Medaka had expected Kalki to provide guidance, but instead she felt let down. She then told him that she no longer needed his help. Kalki was shocked to hear that. Zenkichi later woke up and told Kalki not to dwell on it too much. In his view, Kalki was not wrong, it was just that Medaka was always right. Kalki said that he had not failed yet, and that he would not give up over just 1 or 2 rejections. Zenkichi was genuinely impressed by that determination. Kalki then went to see Kana, carrying a large stack of books. He wanted to help her express her feelings until they were accepted. Kana said that she had not asked for that kind of help, but Kalki replied that the student council's duty was to help everyone. He explained that a love letter had to come from one's own emotions and personal choice of words. Kana said that if she were capable of doing that, she would have written it herself from the start. Kalki encouraged Kana to practice so she could write it on her own. He told her to rely on her own feelings and to take responsibility for making her wishes come true. He shared that he himself had never given up on the girl he admired for 10 years. Kalki stayed by Kana's side, teaching her patiently until her writing truly reflected what she felt inside. For an entire week, Kalki continued guiding her, and in the end, Kana finally managed to write her own letter for the person she loved. The result of that heartfelt effort, born from persistence, exhaustion, and sincere emotion, was kept private out of respect for personal boundaries. Medaka praised Kalki for his excellent work. Kalki responded that he had simply done what he was supposed to do. Medaka told him not to downplay his success. She then gently patted his head as a sign of appreciation for carrying out his responsibilities so well. Kalki became extremely flustered and even shed quiet tears of emotion when he saw Medaka smile and express her gratitude. Zenkichi felt awkward watching the two of them together. That was Medaka's vision of a school, one where blooming fields of flowers seemed to spread quietly behind the student council room. Hakoniwa High School puts a strong emphasis on student independence, and the student council carries a wide range of responsibilities. On that particular day, the council workload was overwhelming. Zenkichi and Kalki were completely exhausted, and Kalki even felt like quitting. However, Zenkichi made it clear that Kalki could not simply walk away. Kalki admitted that Medaka was truly amazing, since she handled work that was 10 times heavier than what he and Zenkichi were dealing with. Medaka brushed off Kalki's praise, explaining that she also felt buried under piles of documents. Medaka pointed out that the main issue was that all school clubs had finished recruiting members and had already started their activities, yet there were countless requests related to budget allocations. Zenkichi observed that it seemed like the student council did not really need a vice president as much as it needed a treasurer. Kalki, who used to be part of the judo club, shared his perspective by saying that every single yen in the budget mattered, and he understood why each club wanted an increase. Zenkichi remarked that Hakoniwa High School had far too many extracurricular activities, ranging from an archery club to a bowling club and even a bobsled club. He genuinely wondered what the school leadership was trying to achieve with such variety. Medaka explained that there were strict limits on budget submissions. If the funds were divided evenly, each club would only receive a trivial amount, and that kind of solution would clearly be unfair. Zenkichi reflected on how Medaka had essentially lived in her own world. Back when she was in her first year of middle school, she had solved the most difficult math problem ever recorded, a puzzle known as the jugular problem. As a reward, she received an enormous sum of money. Ironically, that history made Medaka poorly suited to act as a treasurer, since she herself had a complicated relationship with money. Kalki then suggested an idea of giving all the funds to a single club. His own role would be to plan an inter-club competition. At its core, the event would function as a social activity, but the allocated budget could be awarded to the winning club. Zenkichi realized that Kalki was sharper than he had expected. Medaka agreed that the idea had merit, but she felt that something like a simple running competition would be too limited. If taken seriously, it would heavily favor the track and field club. Shortly after, Zenkichi discovered something promising. A letter had been submitted to the suggestion box, explaining that the 55-meter swimming pool was rarely used and requesting an event, so the facility could finally serve a purpose. That afternoon, Zenkichi informed Hansode that the student council would be hosting an inter-club water arts contest. The event would take place at the new swimming pool and was scheduled for Sunday. The club that won the contest would receive additional budget funds. Hansode pointed out that this seemed to benefit the swimming club the most, but Zenkichi reassured her that the student council had already taken that concern into account. The planned activities did not include swimming races. Instead, they featured games like bread-eating challenges and water basketball. Hansode argued that holding competitions in water was still unfair, because Hakoniwa High School's swimming club had 3 so-called flying fish who were extremely enthusiastic about money. Zenkichi did not understand what Hansode meant by that at all. Hansode insisted that he ask properly if he wanted an explanation, and Zenkichi complied by humbling himself before her. Hansode then explained that the 3 fish were special members who were truly exceptional. They were completely driven by profit, and would only participate in competitions that offered cash prizes. They even provided services to other schools as long as the price was right. They had no hesitation about organizing their own events and often included betting as part of them. Hansode warned Zenkichi to be cautious, since even though Medaka might be extraordinary, there was still a chance she could lose. Meanwhile, the 3 individuals known as the Flying Fish were discussing the upcoming water arts contest. They dismissed the event as foolish, yet recognized that it could work in their favor. Because prize money was involved, they decided they had no reason to skip it. They were genuinely excited to participate, as they were willing to do almost anything for money. The trio consisted of Yumimishi, the swimming club president, Satsu, the vice president, and Mokana. All 3 were deeply obsessed with earning as much money as possible. On the day of the water contest, contestants from many different clubs had already gathered and prepared themselves. Zenkichi admitted that the event had clearly become a major attraction. All 15 clubs that had requested budget increases were present. Kalki was surprised by how many clubs joined the water arts contest, especially given how short the announcement period had been. It seemed that every club was struggling with financial issues. Familiar faces appeared from the Kendo Club, the Track and Field Club, and even Nekami from the Judo Club. Zenkichi wondered where the swimming club members Hansode had described were. He was momentarily stunned when he saw Medaka wearing a swimsuit. Not long after, Medaka delivered an opening address before the contest began. She expressed the idea that while the saying about not working and not eating failed to capture the true nature of human thinking, it was still fair to say that those who worked would earn their food. She encouraged everyone to give their best and aim for the prize. After that, Zenkichi explained the rules. The match was divided into 4 rounds, and whichever club earned the highest total score would be declared the winner. There were 3 basic rules in the contest. First, each club could only send 3 members, and they had to work together as a team. Second, the male students would be given a handicap. Since all participants in every contest were mixed, all male students would wear flotation devices on their arms to keep the competition fair. Before Zenkichi could explain the 3rd rule, Medaka asked him to hand over the microphone. Medaka explained that the contest was meant to motivate everyone. She believed many people would feel disappointed if only the winning club received a reward. She wanted everyone to stay excited and enthusiastic about participating, and she also wanted everyone to have fun. Because of that, she had prepared a bonus rule to make the event even more exciting. Medaka announced that the student council would also take part in the water arts contest. If any club managed to outperform the student council, she would triple the prize, with extra money coming directly from her own pocket. The contestants were thrilled when they heard this and became even more fired up to give it their all. Unfortunately, Zenkichi and Kaki did not share that excitement. They could not believe they also had to participate, especially since they had tried to stop this from happening earlier. Nekami grew even more energized and felt confident that the water arts contest would be a lot of fun. Medaka then officially opened the event. The first competition to be held was water basketball. Zenkichi honestly could not wrap his head around it. He had assumed the contest would be relatively calm, but after hearing Hansode mention something about 3 flying fish, he began to feel uneasy. Before long, the baskets emerged from the pool. At that moment, Mokana asked whether Satsu was ready for the water basketball game. Satsu felt confident that he could handle it. Even though Medaka was often known as a monster on the level of a T-Rex, the 3 members of the swimming club moved through the water like sharks. Yumichi agreed and reminded everyone that their goal was absolute victory, guided by their motto of winning and losing for the sake of prize money. 16 baskets had been prepared inside the pool, making this the first competition of its kind at Hakoniwa High School. The commentators were the head of the broadcasting club, Thonzaku, along with Hansode. Before the match began, Thonzaku explained the rules. There were a total of 24 balls, with 12 assigned to each team, placed at the bottom of the pool. Each team had to throw as many balls as possible into the baskets before the time limit ran out. Every successful shot counted as 1 point. Thonzaku and Hansode encouraged everyone to compete with full energy. During the commentary, Thonzaku wondered whether Hansode was truly close to Zenkichi. Hansode admitted that her relationship with Zenkichi went back a long time and was very close, and she even said that Thonzaku could ask anything about him. Thonzaku then asked her to share the story behind her connection with Zenkichi. Feeling shy, Hansode explained that she and Zenkichi had attended different middle schools and first met in April, when Zenkichi picked up an eraser she had intentionally dropped. Meanwhile, Zenkichi could not understand why Hansode was talking about something so trivial during the match. Not long after, Nekami laughed and suggested that Zenkichi should have made a different rule. In her view, the flotation devices on the arms would only slow people down when diving to grab items from the bottom of the pool. Zenkichi explained that the flotation devices were meant to give other students an advantage. He emphasized that Nekami was the only one whose team consisted entirely of girls, simply because she did not want any handicaps. Even though Nekami was no longer the captain, she clearly had no intention of giving up her reputation as a troublemaker. Kaki was genuinely confused about why Nekami was not embarrassed to openly admit to bending the rules. Medaka did not mind if Nekami wanted to rely on underhanded tactics, but Medaka intended to use her own methods as well. She was confident that the match would turn into an exciting showdown. Nekami smiled and accepted Medaka's handshake. The prize the contestants were competing for was an increase in the winning club's budget. Meanwhile, Thonzaku asked for Hansode's thoughts on how the basketball match would unfold. Hansode believed that none of them had played this game since grade school, and that the basketball club might have an advantage. Whether on land or in water, the core objective of basketball was still to throw the ball into the basket to score points, which was something the basketball club practiced regularly. Thonzaku admitted that Hansode's reasoning made sense. According to Hansode, the techniques used in water basketball were slightly different, but most people were not aware of those differences. Not long after that, Thonzaku gave the signal to start the basketball match. All the contestants immediately jumped into the pool. The male students struggled to dive because flotation devices were strapped to their arms. At the same time, the female students also had trouble. Even without floaties, the pool was so deep that they could not touch the bottom with their feet, and the balls were out of reach. Once soaked, the balls became heavy, making accurate throws difficult. Sounds of panic echoed loudly from the pool, yet Hansode seemed to enjoy hearing the contestants under that kind of pressure. Meanwhile, Nekami managed to grab one ball from the bottom of the pool. Her teammates called out to her, admitting how hard it was to retrieve the balls, especially since any missed throw caused the ball to sink straight back down. Nekami's expression showed no sign of panic at all, even though she quietly admitted to herself that the match was far more difficult than she had expected. She was surprised to see Zenkichi and Kaki relaxing at the edge of the pool instead of joining in. She questioned why they were not getting into the water right away. Zenkichi and Kaki explained that if they entered the pool, they would only get in Medaka's way. That answer shocked Nekami, and she immediately looked around for Medaka. She wondered where Medaka had gone, but Zenkichi did not seem concerned about her whereabouts. He reflected that relying on tricks or shortcuts might be Nekami's approach, but Medaka was different. Medaka believed in fairness, skill, and doing things her own way, no matter the place or the situation. At that moment, Medaka was carrying 20 balls at once from the bottom of the pool, holding them tightly as she swam upward. Soon she surfaced and threw all 20 balls into the basket at the same time. Every single one went in, and the student council team earned 20 points in a single throw. Danzaku was stunned and never expected Medaka to use such an extreme strategy. Hansode, however, believed that Medaka's method was actually the most correct one. She had explained earlier that underwater basketball required a slightly different technique, and throwing multiple balls together could be more effective. A larger mass made aiming easier, with gravity helping guide the throw. Since the balls were thrown upward at the same time, they would not scatter apart. Hansode also praised Medaka's incredible lung capacity, as she had stayed underwater long enough to collect all 20 balls. Inspired by this, the other contestants quickly began using the same method, growing more enthusiastic as they raced to score points. Before long, the match time ran out and many clubs ended up with tied scores. Zenkichi felt indebted to Hansode for sharing the technique, since other clubs were also able to earn 20 points. He believed that if the organizers alone had the highest score, people would naturally question the fairness of the results. Medaka, however, did not see it as owing Hansode anything, especially since the student council did not take first place in the end. The swimming club claimed the top position, and no one noticed that they had reached 20 points even faster than Medaka. The swimming club was represented by 3 students nicknamed the Flying Fish, whom Hansode had mentioned earlier. Medaka approached them, feeling puzzled. She reflected on how long she herself had held her breath while diving, and she realized that they must have used a technique of releasing air beforehand to sink more quickly. She noted that this approach was extremely risky and left no room for mistakes, which could lead to serious consequences. Medaka could not help but wonder why they would push themselves that far. It became clear that the team was entirely focused on the prize money, smiling for every yen they earned and showing little concern for anything beyond their goal. The Hakaniwa High School Student Council places a very strong emphasis on achievement and actively launches various special programs to attract outstanding students from different regions. All students from grade 10 and above are considered part of the special program. The school provides them with a wide range of facilities to ensure they can enjoy a comfortable school life. However, the special teams are filled with students who have unusual personalities, especially when unexpected events occur, such as the actions of the 3 so-called flying fish from the swimming club. The water arts competition continued, with the second event being a 3-legged water race. Danzaku immediately explained the rules. Each pair of participants had to tie one of their legs together and move forward, and the team that reached the finish line first would receive 15 points. The second team would earn 14 points, and the points would decrease accordingly. Hansode considered the contest both ridiculous and impressive at the same time. According to her, the track club might have an advantage, but the swimming club and the student council would also show their capabilities. At that moment, Nekami wondered why Medaka was not participating in the second contest. Medaka explained that if she joined every competition, it would no longer feel like a true interclub event. Nekami laughed and said that Medaka should give others a chance to shine. Nekami also mentioned that Medaka seemed to have already drawn the attention of the 3 members of the swimming club, who were known for being extremely difficult opponents because they were willing to push themselves very hard for financial rewards. Medaka then asked whether Nekami knew anything about the 3 swimmers. Nekami explained that Umiumichi was in the same class as her. While most members of the special teams were considered eccentric, Umiumichi blended into the classroom more naturally. Nekami believed that Umiumichi was a different kind of genius when compared to Medaka and Kaoki. He excelled in butterfly stroke, backstroke, sprinting, long-distance running, and medley events. Nekami described him as a true all-rounder. Suddenly, Mohana appeared and said that she did not really need others to understand her group, but she could explain what she and her teammates wanted. Their goal turned out to be creating a pool filled with money. It had been the shared dream of the 3 of them to swim in a pool full of money every single day. Meanwhile, Kaoki told Zenkichi that it would not be appropriate for the student council, as the event organizer, to dominate the competition, but that did not mean they should hold back. Zenkichi understood and felt motivated to give his best effort. He planned to match Kaoki's running speed as closely as possible. Kaoki admitted that he felt lucky to have such a reliable partner. When the starting signal was given, Zenkichi and Kaoki immediately sprinted forward. However, their steps were not well synchronized, and they ended up arguing while continuing to run. Hansode laughed as she watched their behavior. Danzaku described the scene as awkward and unfortunate. Even so, Zenkichi and Kaoki ran at an incredible speed, making Isagi and Ariya, as members of the track club, feel slightly embarrassed. Meanwhile, Umiumichi and Satsu remained calm in last place, which made Danzaku feel confused. Hansode laughed and praised Umiumichi for being able to stay in sync with Satsu's movements for over 20 meters. At that moment, Umiumichi and Satsu briefly stopped and prepared to do something unexpected. To everyone's surprise, they began swimming together despite having their legs tied. Their movements were perfectly coordinated as they submerged and resurfaced for air. Danzaku was shocked to see the swimming club performing such a daring yet controlled maneuver. The two swimmers moved swiftly and smoothly, passing their opponents one by one. For their final move, they leaped into the air like flying fish before finally reaching the finish line. They secured first place, followed by the track club in second place, and the student council in third. Zenkichi and Koki were still in disbelief that Yumimichi and Satsu had swum with their legs tied, knowing how risky it could be. Zenkichi genuinely wondered whether Yumimichi and Satsu ever thought about their own safety during the race. The third contest involved catching eels, with only one participant from each club allowed to compete. Nakami managed to catch 9 eels, and Mokana from the swimming club also caught 9. Meanwhile, Medaka, the student council president, did not score any points because the eels in front of her scattered before she could catch them. By the end of the third contest, the swimming club held first place, followed by the track club in second, while the student council fell to 8th place. Koki and Zenkichi had no idea what kind of contest would be held in the final round. The final event was intentionally not decided by the student council to ensure fairness. Koki mentioned that the last contest would be chosen by Danzaku. Zenkichi felt that this decision actually made things less fair, since it allowed the swimming club to participate in a water-based event. Suddenly, the 3 members of the swimming club approached them. Satsu laughed and said that he had hoped the student council would be more intense. He felt very confident that his club would take all the prizes. Zenkichi wondered if there was anything the 3 of them cared about besides money, especially since they could simply enjoy the competition itself. Satsu firmly believed that money was the most valuable thing in the world. Suddenly, Medaka appeared and described the 3 members of the swimming club as deeply pitiful, considering that they had once been sincere and dedicated swimmers who never sacrificed their integrity for money. Medaka was convinced that the 3 of them had gone through traumatic experiences that eventually changed them into people who prioritized money above all else. Koki was completely captivated by Medaka's words, while Zenkichi commented that Medaka's greatest talent was her divine sense of virtue and righteousness. Medaka promised that she would rehabilitate Yumimichi and his teammates by inspiring them to use their money for meaningful contributions instead. In contrast, Satsu arrogantly claimed that he would drag Medaka into despair. Meanwhile, Danzaku asked Hansode what kind of contest should be chosen for the final round. Hansode was thrilled to make the decision and settled on an aquatic cavalry-style competition. Danzaku then asked Hansode to explain the rules in detail. Hansode adjusted the rules to give clubs that were behind a better chance to catch up. Headbands taken from the top-ranked club would be worth significantly more points, with the highest-ranked club's headband valued at 16 points, while the lowest-ranked club's headband would be worth only 1 point. This setup naturally made the leading club the primary target. Zenkichi strongly agreed, believing the rule would greatly boost everyone's motivation. He was so satisfied with Hansode's rules that he openly expressed his fondness for her. Medaka responded by lightly reprimanding Zenkichi and reminded him that he was free to admire anyone he liked, as long as he never forgot his responsibilities as a member of the student council. Medaka then insisted that their first priority should be defeating the swimming club. Elsewhere, Satsu asked about Yumimichi's plan. At that moment, the swimming club had 48 points, while the student council had 33. If the student council managed to take the swimming club's headbands, they would rise to the top position. However, if the swimming club succeeded in taking the student council's headbands, they would gain a 15-point lead over the track club. Even if the track club defeated the orchestra club and earned 14 points, the swimming club would still remain in a safe position. According to Yumimichi, the rules were not designed to help those who were behind, but rather to corner the student council. Mokana felt that following the expected scenario would bring no real benefit, and she suggested taking a safer route by targeting the headbands of the 7th-ranked team instead. Yumimichi agreed, and the group remained focused on the financial rewards they aimed to secure. Just as they were about to carry out their plan, Medaka suddenly asked whether they intended to avoid confrontation. She challenged them directly, determined to teach them something she believed was far more valuable than money. Mokana was taken aback by this, while Satsu tried to stop Medaka, sensing that the topic was deeply sensitive for Mokana. Mokana withdrew her earlier remarks and grew irritated by Medaka's attitude. She put on her headband and urged Yumimichi and Satsu to face Medaka head-on. As soon as the signal was given, the swimming club and the student council immediately clashed. Both sides pushed against each other with intense determination. Danzaku wondered whether the two teams would end up evenly matched. Hansode explained that the main issue lay in their foundation. She believed the student council had the advantage in raw strength, but their formations required 2 people per base. She also noted that even without water in the pool, the swimming club would still surpass them in teamwork. Medaka openly acknowledged how impressive the swimming club was and expressed genuine admiration for their strength. She admitted that she had a natural fondness for anyone who managed to impress her. Mokana was confused by Medaka's words, especially since Medaka had previously criticized the three of them for being obsessed with money. Medaka then pointed out that their tactics were dangerously extreme, as they were willing to put their own lives at risk for the sake of money, and she could not understand how they could treat such a mindset so casually. She stated that the three of them had become completely consumed by money. Mokana grew angry and insisted that Medaka had no understanding of their situation. She explained that her father had left home because the family had no money, and her mother became ill after working herself to exhaustion. She also shared that Yumiumichi's parents had separated due to financial hardship, and that the orphanage where Satsu was raised had been forced to shut down because it ran out of funds. Those experiences were the reason money had come to matter more to them than anything else. Mokana believed that sacrificing everything for money was acceptable, because people would be deeply distressed if they lost their wealth, yet would feel nothing at all if the three of them simply disappeared. All of a sudden, Mokana managed to push Medaka away, sending her flying. Seeing this, Kauki and Zenkichi immediately threw their life rings toward the spot where Medaka was about to land. Yumiumichi felt confident that Medaka's fall would secure their victory in the contest, and that no one would be able to beat them after that. Unexpectedly, Medaka stood firmly on top of one of the life rings. She stated that even if Yumiumichi and the others were living lives that felt like hell, that was still not a reason to throw those lives away, and she considered the three of them to have made a costly mistake. Medaka also mentioned that Mokana had completely provoked her anger. Danzaku watched in awe as Medaka balanced herself on the life ring, while Mokana could hardly believe that Medaka was capable of such a feat. Medaka then used all 4 life rings to support her hands and feet on the water's surface. Zenkichi cheered her on, encouraging her to win the contest. Medaka quickly leaped toward the swimming club's foundation and pushed forward with all her strength. Her hand reached Mokana's headband as she expressed that Mokana might be able to recover lost money, but a lost life could never be brought back. According to her, nothing was more important than life itself, and if the three of them were to die, she would be deeply saddened. Medaka jumped while holding on to Mokana, pulling her along into the water. The unexpected move shocked everyone watching. Zenkichi realized that this was Medaka's third ability, known as excessive affection. Both Mokana and Medaka fell into the pool together. Danzaku shouted excitedly after seeing them splash into the water. Hansade concluded that Medaka had successfully taken her opponent's headband during her long speech, and the life rings that supported Medaka as she fell were considered valid support. Because of this, the Student Council's victory over the swimming club was officially recognized. As a result, the Student Council team climbed up the rankings with a total of 49 points. Medaka acknowledged that their battle had been intense and could not be decided by money alone. She then handed the unconscious Mokana over to Yumiumichi and Satsu. Satsu questioned why Medaka cared about a group of people as hopeless as them, and he believed that her words would not change anything since the three of them had already devoted their lives to money. Medaka told them that they did not need to change because she did not wish to force them to. What mattered most to her was that they did not die because of the lifestyle they chose. In her view, it was better to live for money than to die for it. Medaka even agreed with their ambitious dream of building a swimming pool and insisted that they should make it come true. She also asked them to value and care for the lives of their friends. Mokana eventually woke up and asked Yumiumichi and Satsu whether they valued her more than money. They clearly stated that money was more important. Mokana smiled and then asked which one they liked more, her or money. After a brief pause, they both admitted that they liked Mokana more. Mokana smiled again and said that she also cared about them more than money. Not long after that, the whistle was blown, signaling the end of the match. Unexpectedly, the winner turned out to be the judo club, as Nekami had managed to collect headbands from other teams while the student council and the swimming club were locked in battle. The judo club earned the highest score and claimed both the main prize and the bonus reward. Nekami laughed and remarked that trickery had defeated honesty. He stated that the match had led him to a major victory and expressed his hope that he could face Medaka someday. Both the student council and the swimming club never imagined the outcome would turn out that way. The water performance contest came to an end, with the judo club receiving the promised main prize and bonus reward. However, Nekami said that he did not need them and decided to distribute the rewards to the other clubs instead. As usual, Nekami enjoyed stirring things up. Although the water performance contest was considered a success, Medaka admitted that she received a lot of criticism for using her personal funds to finance a school event. Wanting to prevent this from happening again, she decided to bring in someone with financial expertise to join the student council. That person was Mokana from the swimming club. From that day on, Mokana was appointed as the student council's treasurer. Medaka asked Zenkichi and Kaki to get along well with her. The student council of Hakoniwa High School had finally appointed a treasurer, which meant that activity budgets that had been on hold were now moving forward. Zenkichi felt relieved that the student council had gained new members, even though a small part of him felt uneasy seeing others hold positions that seemed more important than his own. He understood that he did not have any special administrative skills like those required of a secretary or treasurer, yet the thought still made him restless. When Zenkichi opened the door to the student council room, he was caught off guard by Mokana, who happened to be in the middle of changing her clothes. Mokana immediately turned red with embarrassment. Overwhelmed by shock and frustration, she reacted strongly and demanded compensation from Zenkichi for what she believed was an invasion of her privacy. Zenkichi could not understand why Mokana, after causing such a commotion, was still insisting on payment. He firmly refused, arguing that it was her own mistake for not locking the door, and he also made it clear that he had never intended to see her in that situation. Mokana broke into tears and continued pressing the issue, leaving Zenkichi with no real option other than giving in. Once she received the money, her mood instantly improved, which made Zenkichi quietly judge her behavior as shallow. Mokana was the student council treasurer and a member of the special class 1-1. She was the star athlete of the swimming club and known for her outstanding talent. Her role in the student council was specifically focused on handling financial matters. The treasurer position had been vacant for a long time, and after conditions prioritizing the swimming club were met, she also received a daily allowance of 320 cents. Mokana had accepted a recruitment invitation from Medaka and was ready to begin her duties. As Mokana looked around for a computer to use, Zenkichi explained that there was no computer in the student council room. Instead, she would have to rely on an abacus. With Medaka around, technology was considered unnecessary, since Medaka could handle any calculation effortlessly using her own mind. Mokana agreed that buying a computer would be wasteful and decided that the abacus was more than enough for her needs. An awkward silence filled the student council room, with neither of them knowing what to talk about. The atmosphere felt heavy, and Zenkichi found it strange that he could relax and read manga while Mokana stayed fully focused on her work. He was curious about her, but felt it would be inappropriate to interrupt her concentration. He began to think that becoming close to Mokana might not be possible. After the earlier incident, it felt as though his presence barely registered with her anymore. Zenkichi also wondered why Medaka and Kaki had not shown up that day. At the same time, Mokana felt uncomfortable with how quiet the room had become. She blamed herself for immediately diving into work and worried that Zenkichi might not be interested in her at all, especially since he had been absorbed in his manga the entire time. The thought of being questioned later by Yumimeshi and Satsu made her uneasy. Satsu had encouraged her to join the student council so she could learn more about the world beyond her usual circle, while Yumimechi had hoped it would help her make friends within her grade. Trying to reassure herself, Mokana attempted to start a conversation. She suddenly commented on the weather being clear, but unfortunately, it was pouring rain outside. She felt confused, since small talk about the weather usually worked. This made her think that Zenkichi might dislike her. Zenkichi, on the other hand, assumed that her comment was simply an attempt to break the silence. Wanting to respond positively, he tried to compliment her, but his poorly chosen words were misunderstood. Mokana took it the wrong way and reacted harshly, leaving Zenkichi to realize once again how little he understood about dealing with women. Mokana became even more convinced that Zenkichi disliked her. She wanted to apologize but could not find the right moment. Both of them silently wished that someone would step in and ease the tension. That was when Hansode suddenly entered the student council room. Both Zenkichi and Mokana immediately felt disappointed, as Hansode was known for having no sense of atmosphere. Hansode approached Mokana and casually introduced herself. Mokana sensed an air of mystery around Hansode. Even though Hansode was not a student council member, she was in charge of organizing the aquatic art contest, which made Mokana question why she had come to the student council room in the first place. Hansode then attempted to show Mokana a photo involving Medaka that was meant to stir reactions. Mokana was visibly shocked and tried to take the photo away. Hansode explained that the pictures were intended for submission to the school newspaper and casually mentioned that she had taken thousands of shots from different angles. Zenkichi stepped in and asked Hansode to stop bothering the new student council member. He even promised to treat her to good food if she would leave Mokana alone. Hansode agreed and quickly exited the room. Afterward, Zenkichi apologized for Hansode's troublesome behavior. Mokana said that Zenkichi had saved her and asked who Hansode really was. Zenkichi admitted that he had no idea, which surprised Mokana since she thought they were friends. Zenkichi did not see it as an issue, believing that what mattered most was that Hansode considered him a friend. Mokana wondered about Medaka and questioned whether she showed affection to everyone the same way she once did with her. Zenkichi explained that Medaka used to be like that, and many people actually received their first affectionate moment from her. However, ever since grade school, Zenkichi had asked Medaka to be more mindful of herself. If Mokana had received that kind of affection, it meant Medaka considered her someone truly special and rare. Mokana then questioned why Medaka seemed to love everyone. She admitted that she herself never fully understood why Medaka was born with such a strong desire to help others. Mokana recalled a time when she had no money at all and no one stepped in to help her. Even her friends eventually walked away. She did not feel resentment, believing that the world naturally works through giving and receiving. Still, she felt that she had nothing to offer in return to those who stayed close to her. Zenkichi asked whether Mokana could say the same about her relationship with Yumimichi and Satsu, questioning whether those bonds were also built on mutual give and take. Mokana firmly stated that Yumimichi and Satsu were different because they felt like family to her. It felt natural for her to care about them deeply. Zenkichi pointed out that Medaka was actually the same, as she viewed everyone on Earth as part of her family. Because of that, Medaka could not simply stop caring about Mokana. Earlier, Medaka had noticed Mokana pacing back and forth in front of the suggestion box. Since the incident at the swimming pool, Medaka had not been able to stop thinking about her, and gradually realized that her feelings had grown stronger. Medaka then asked Mokana to take on the role of treasurer in the student council. That moment marked the first time Mokana realized someone was relying on her and asking for her help. At that point, Mokana became aware that she was having a relaxed conversation with Zenkichi. She thought it might be a chance to make a new friend, yet she hesitated, worried that going too far could cause unnecessary trouble. In the end, she believed she should follow the example Medaka had shown her. Acting on impulse, Mokana expressed that she had developed feelings toward Zenkichi and leaned closer in a moment of emotional confusion. Zenkichi was completely caught off guard by her sudden confession. At the same time, Medaka and Koki were walking down the school corridor toward the student council room, deeply engaged in discussing the challenges of managing council responsibilities. Upon arriving, they were shocked by the scene before them, as Mokana and Zenkichi appeared to be in an awkward and misleading situation. Medaka remarked that young people were free to explore their feelings, but they should at least choose a more appropriate place or ensure privacy. Koki could not understand why Zenkichi would even end up in such a situation inside the student council room. Zenkichi insisted that they had misunderstood everything and claimed he did not need their advice. On another day, Kizashi, a first-year student from the art club, asked Medaka to become his model. He proudly described himself as an artist seeking inspiration. Medaka agreed to help and allowed Kizashi to portray her based on his imagination, maintaining a respectful and professional atmosphere. Her presence was so striking that Koki described her as looking like a goddess. Zenkichi, however, could not understand why someone so divine would pose with such intensity and confidence. Kizashi explained that the theme of his upcoming piece was a seaside goddess, which required someone with Medaka's presence. As a member of a special art team, Kizashi was preparing a piece for an upcoming competition. He struggled to find the right theme and failed several times until he once again found inspiration in Medaka. Medaka accepted his request without hesitation and fully committed to helping him as a model. Meanwhile, Zenkichi felt uncomfortable watching Koki's overly excited reaction. Unfortunately, things did not go as planned. Kizashi eventually admitted that he could not finish the painting. Zenkichi picked up the sketch Kizashi had dropped and commented that it was well done, though Koki felt it failed to capture Medaka's true beauty. In his view, true art should go beyond reality rather than simply copying it. Kizashi agreed, stating that an exact replica could easily be achieved with a photograph. As an artist, he believed his work needed to surpass reality itself. In the end, Kizashi confessed that Medaka's beauty was simply too perfect to be transformed into art. Medaka felt deeply disappointed, and Zenkichi scolded Kizashi for carelessly hurting her feelings after earnestly asking her to be his model in the first place. Kizashi defended his attitude by claiming that artists must follow their instincts freely, believing that without such freedom, true art could not exist. Zenkichi asked Koki what they were supposed to do next. Koki felt that there was nothing Zenkichi needed to do, and if Medaka was not the right fit, then they simply had to look for another model. Later that day, Zenkichi approached Isagi and offered her the role of a swimwear model. Isagi firmly refused. Zenkichi then asked her to reconsider and hinted that he might reveal Isagi's past misbehavior if she did not think it over. Isagi was confused by how shy Zenkichi looked despite trying to pressure her. Zenkichi explained that only Isagi could do it, believing that her well-trained physique, shaped through sports, would carry strong artistic value. Isagi became flustered after hearing that praise, and in the end, she agreed to help. Unexpectedly, Kauki had also found another model and brought Nakomi with him. Kauki and Zenkichi continued to argue, each fully convinced that the model he had brought was the best choice. Kizashi expressed deep gratitude to both Izagi and Nakomi and promised to create a true masterpiece. They soon prepared themselves to pose for him, ready for the painting process. However, disappointment struck once again, just like what Medaka had experienced earlier. Kauki grew increasingly frustrated as Kizashi became more unpredictable. From Kizashi's perspective, art should never be created through fear, and he honestly admitted that Izagi and Nakomi intimidated him. Zenkichi and Kauki discussed whether they needed to search for yet another model, but suddenly Kizashi became completely captivated by Mokana, standing in front of him, and asked her to become his model. Mokana immediately refused. Zenkichi was certain she would turn him down after witnessing what had happened before. Kizashi then offered Mokana a generous payment if she was willing to help. Upon hearing that, Mokana quickly agreed. Kauki was surprised by how considerate Kizashi seemed toward Mokana. However, to everyone's shock, Kizashi canceled the idea himself, explaining that Mokana resembled a poolside goddess rather than the beach-inspired figure he was seeking. Mokana was clearly disappointed after realizing she would not receive the promised payment. Zenkichi once again asked Kauki what they should do next, and Kauki felt that the student council had failed in their mission. Suddenly, Medaka stood up and urged them not to give up so quickly. Kauki and Zenkichi asked if Medaka was truly okay. Medaka explained that inspiration meant creating bolder, fresher ideas and reminded them that the Hakoniwa High School Student Council still had 2 members left. Kauki and Zenkichi then stepped forward to help by posing themselves. To their surprise, Kizashi's brush began moving wildly, driven by intense focus. He kept painting, but before long, he discarded the canvas, unable to define what the artwork was becoming. Medaka described him as someone overwhelmed by creative waves. She realized that they had truly run out of ideas. Izagi commented that Kizashi's self-centered approach had gone too far. Nakomi wondered if even 4 girls had not been enough and urged Kizashi to stop complaining and try painting again. Kizashi admitted that he was in a hurry, but he would only paint what he genuinely wanted to paint. He openly acknowledged his selfishness but insisted that he was not careless. Medaka appreciated his honesty, yet the situation remained unchanged. Zenkichi asked what kind of goddess Kizashi was truly searching for. Kizashi believed that artists were destined to struggle until they found the perfect idea. Not long after, Hansode arrived and invited Zenkichi to go to the cafeteria with her. The moment Kizashi saw Hansode, his eyes filled with emotion. He asked her to change into a swimsuit and wear a float ring as part of the concept. To Kizashi, Hansode's innocent expression, simple figure, and undeveloped features surpassed all the previous models. He considered it the purest form of art. After finishing Hansode's painting, Zenkichi realized that Kizashi had been searching for a goddess filled with untapped potential, something that Medaka and the others could not represent. Hansode did not fully understand what that meant, but she felt proud to have stood out among everyone else. Hansode became Kizashi's final model and was rewarded with cafeteria vouchers. After that, Kizashi submitted his artwork to the contest he was participating in. Medaka admitted that this time, Hansode had taken all the spotlight and that the student council had technically failed. However, Zenkichi felt that Kizashi did not see it that way. He then showed Medaka the painting Kizashi had created, which included all of them together. From Zenkichi's perspective, Kizashi had always painted exactly what he wanted to paint. A special group was assigned to maintain stability at the school. This organization operated independently, outside the school's official policies and formal regulations. They were widely known as the School Enforcement Unit or the Disciplinary Committee. One of the enforcement officers, Harigane, was especially strict when reprimanding students whose appearance did not follow school rules. He believed that appearance reflected a person's character, and he was convinced that students who violated dress codes showed a lack of discipline in their mindset. As a member of Disciplinary Committee Squad 3, Harigane refused to let improperly dressed students pass through the school gates. Several students who were stopped at the entrance voiced their objections, pointing out that the student council president and her members were also wearing outfits that did not fully comply with school regulations. On that day, Harigane went to the student council room to address what he considered inappropriate appearances among its members. He felt deeply disappointed, believing that the student council should serve as role models for the rest of the students. He could not understand why they would openly challenge established rules. Harigane criticized Zenkichi for wearing a jacket underneath his school uniform. Zenkichi believed that his style could set a new trend at the time. Harigane was also visibly unsettled by Kauki's bold fashion choice, which he considered improper and distracting. Kauki found himself unable to counter Harigane's criticism any further. Harigane then turned his attention to Mokana, questioning her apparent indifference to the situation. Mokana explained that she believed her outfit still followed the official guidelines. Harigane insisted that he was not easily deceived and pointed out inconsistencies in her explanation, eventually concluding that she had intentionally tested his attentiveness. Mokana acknowledged his sharp observation and admitted that she had only wanted to see how closely he paid attention to the rules. Harigane remained in the student council room for a while longer. Mokana casually asked whether wearing unconventional attire would be acceptable, but Harigane firmly rejected the idea. Medaka then asked Harigane to end the confrontation for the day, expressing her belief that no one had bad intentions despite their unconventional appearance. Harigane initially agreed, responded politely, and apologized for interrupting their meeting. However, he soon returned in an aggressive state and confronted Medaka directly. He claimed that Medaka was the most problematic of all and that her manner of dress was the most embarrassing example on campus. Medaka believed that Harigane's judgment was misguided, as she felt no part of herself was shameful. Harigane argued that her outfit set a poor example by revealing elements that could influence other students negatively. Medaka dismissed the concern and showed no embarrassment over her appearance. Harigane warned her to consider how her actions might affect the student body, especially if others chose to imitate her. Medaka went even further, suggesting that her outfit could be proposed as a standard uniform for female students. Harigane strongly rejected this idea without hesitation. Meanwhile, Zenkichi was surprised to see that Medaka was also being scolded by Harigane. Koki believed that Medaka was preparing an overwhelmingly persuasive argument that would leave listeners unable to object. Harigane demanded that Medaka change her appearance immediately, but Medaka firmly refused. This refusal only intensified Harigane's anger. After he left, Koki reminded everyone that opposing the disciplinary committee was not a trivial matter, especially given Harigane's reputation for strict enforcement. Harigane was widely known by the nickname Iron Fist. He was a rule enforcer personally recruited by the head of the disciplinary committee. In order to maintain order, he had been granted authority to use force when necessary, a policy that had reportedly led to a sharp decline in serious disturbances since his rise to prominence. Medaka admitted that she disliked the idea of someone being granted such authority. While she understood his intentions, she firmly believed that she herself had done nothing wrong. In her view, humans were not born to obey rules blindly. Instead, rules were created to protect people. After leaving the student council room, Harigane felt extremely frustrated. His anger spilled over into his surroundings, and his intense behavior frightened nearby students. He was deeply resentful that Medaka held the position of student council president. In his eyes, the disciplinary committee worked tirelessly to maintain order, yet they were increasingly disliked by students, while the student council, which he viewed as deeply flawed, had still received 98% of the vote. Not long after, Zenkichi approached Harigane. Harigane stated that he intended to report Medaka to the head of the disciplinary committee. Zenkichi asked him to reconsider. He explained that he would try to persuade Medaka to change her appearance because he did not want the situation to grow more complicated. Harigane questioned whether Zenkichi could truly make Medaka comply. Zenkichi admitted that he could not promise success, but he hoped Harigane would let the matter go. He acknowledged that Medaka often took things to extremes. Hansode expressed concern that Medaka might act recklessly if left unchecked, which was why immediate action seemed necessary. Zenkichi responded that regardless of her appearance, Medaka had already accomplished many positive things for the school. Hansode questioned whether that meant ignoring Medaka's rule violations entirely. She made it clear that she could not accept such reasoning, as it would suggest that certain people stood above the rules and were free to break them without consequences. For Harigane, everyone stood equal before the law, and that belief was exactly why the disciplinary committee had to operate independently. Zenkichi soon realized that Harigane was not someone who could be easily persuaded. Harigane admitted that Medaka had been doing an excellent job as student council president, and that the suggestion box had made a significant impact on the school. Harigane began to think that perhaps he could make use of that system as well. Even so, Zenkichi's instincts told him that whatever Harigane was planning would not go smoothly. That afternoon, Medaka, Harigane, and Zenkichi were standing near a muddy pond. Medaka asked why Harigane had called her to that location and once again made it clear that she had no intention of changing her school uniform. Harigane explained that a request letter had somehow ended up with the disciplinary committee. According to the request, the applicant had lost an important item in the pond and needed help retrieving it. Harigane claimed that if no one acted quickly, the item could be damaged by the water. He asked Medaka to go into the pond because he could not do it himself, presenting the task as a so-called special recovery operation. Harigane was confident that Medaka would change into swimwear before entering the pond, and, at that moment, he planned to replace her uniform with a standard one. That way, he believed he would not need to report the issue to the student council president. When Harigane asked what Medaka intended to do, she immediately jumped into the pond without removing her uniform. Harigane was stunned by her actions and worried that her uniform would be ruined by the dirty water. Medaka, however, treated it as nothing more than an ordinary uniform. Zenkichi acknowledged that Medaka often went to extremes and ignored school rules, even when she tried to change her outward appearance. Medaka then asked what item had been lost. Harigane entered the pond as well and claimed that what he had lost was his own sense of conscience, which Medaka had helped him recover. Medaka felt relieved, believing that Harigane's conscience had been found before it could be completely ruined by the water. Afterward, they climbed out of the pond, and it turned out that Medaka had brought a spare uniform with her. Harigane had not brought a change of clothes and was left wearing a completely soaked uniform. Medaka offered her spare uniform for Harigane to wear. Soon, everyone gathered to watch as Harigane was punished for wearing a uniform that did not follow regulations. Hansade asked Zenkichi why Harigane had ended up being punished like that. Zenkichi explained that Harigane had tried to trick Medaka into changing her uniform. Harigane became extremely frustrated and felt a strong resentment toward Medaka. Later, Hansode was walking down the hallway with Zenkichi and invited him to go look for pancakes after school. Zenkichi found it strange that Hansode never seemed full, as if she had a bottomless appetite. Suddenly, Harigane scolded her for eating while walking and for eating in inappropriate places around the school. Zenkichi and Hansade jokingly labeled Harigane as an overly strict committee member. Harigane attempted to detain Hansode, insisting that her behavior needed to be corrected. He moved aggressively toward her, and Zenkichi tried to stop him. But Hansode pushed Zenkichi toward Harigane instead. The two collided and fell to the ground. Zenkichi was momentarily stunned when he saw Harigane's face without his glasses. Hansade commented that if she were part of the disciplinary committee, she would avoid drawing attention to herself, especially since many students already wanted payback for Harigane's harsh standards. Because of that, she felt Harigane should leave her alone. Hansode quickly walked away. Harigane tried to stop her, but Zenkichi asked him to let her go. Zenkichi pointed out that as long as Harigane provided Hansode with food, she would likely cooperate. Zenkichi then handed Harigane his glasses. Suddenly, Harigane's hand and Zenkichi's hand were locked together by a pair of handcuffs Harigane had brought with him. Zenkichi was convinced that Hansode had intentionally pushed him so this would happen. Zenkichi admitted that the handcuffs were incredibly strong, and Harigane explained that they had been specially ordered from top-grade military suppliers. Zenkichi asked Harigane to unlock them immediately, since he had done nothing wrong. Instead, Harigane launched into a long explanation, which irritated Zenkichi because all he wanted was the key. Unfortunately, Harigane did not have the key with him. Zenkichi commented that if that was the case, the two of them would have no choice but to stay together constantly. Hearing this, Harigane broke down in tears and suggested going to the disciplinary committee room, hoping the key might be there. Zenkichi had no choice but to agree, since they were physically bound together. Along the way, other students stared at them and even took photos of Harigane and Zenkichi as they walked through the school, still handcuffed side by side. Zenkichi wondered whether someone was really targeting Harigane, just as Hansode had suggested. Harigane explained that the ones involved were the Makindu, two students known for using metal and wooden batons. Harigane had confronted them before and taught them a lesson, but instead of backing off, they only grew more resentful toward him. If they showed up again, Harigane was determined not to let them hurt Zenkichi. As Harigane and Zenkichi stepped out of the elevator, they were surprised to run into Medaka. She appeared to be thinking about how to bring the conflict between the student council and the discipline committee to an end, but it seemed that Harigane and Zenkichi had already taken action ahead of her. They quickly realized that Medaka had misunderstood the situation and explained what had actually happened. Zenkichi then asked Medaka to remove the handcuffs. Medaka requested the other cuff from Harigane and tried attaching it to herself and Zenkichi so she could figure out how to undo it. Unfortunately, she ended up stuck as well, making the situation even more complicated. The three of them walked together in that awkward state and quickly became the center of attention among the students. Zenkichi could not help but think about what kind of mistake he must have made to end up handcuffed like this in the middle of school. When Medaka noticed a student struggling to organize scattered documents on the floor, she immediately stepped in to help. After that, she continued assisting other students who were having trouble with various tasks. Harigane began to realize that bringing Medaka along to the discipline committee room might not have been the best idea. She was easily distracted, and her popularity made it hard for her to move unnoticed. Zenkichi pointed out that Medaka naturally stood apart from the two of them. Harigane admitted that ever since he joined the discipline committee, no one had greeted him warmly anymore, and his former friends had slowly drifted away. Zenkichi explained that the discipline committee simply carried a different kind of responsibility. As the three of them walked across the school courtyard, Medaka suddenly noticed a pair of students who looked like they might cause trouble. She urged them to leave the area immediately. Just as expected, the two students were carrying metal and wooden batons. They were the Makin-do. Seeing that Harigane could barely move because he was handcuffed, the Do became overly confident and tried to surround him. They rushed in from opposite sides, clearly intending to overwhelm him. Harigane grew concerned and told Medaka and Zenkichi to stay behind him. Medaka did not even understand why she was supposed to hide, but Harigane reminded her that maintaining order was the duty of the discipline committee. As the Makin-do closed in, Zenkichi and Medaka reacted quickly and disabled the batons with precise kicks, rendering them harmless. Medaka later admitted that she did not really understand what counted as the discipline committee's responsibility, since the Makin-do had not been disturbing the overall order. The two students immediately fled the scene. Zenkichi asked whether Harigane was sure he did not want to detain them. Harigane replied that, just as Medaka had said, they could not be considered a threat to school order, though he was honestly puzzled that he had not even realized he was being targeted. Harigane openly acknowledged how extraordinary Medaka was, especially as a member of the special class 1 to 13. He wondered why Medaka could not simply break the handcuffs, considering she had just destroyed metal batons with ease. Medaka, however, hesitated and asked whether it was really acceptable to break school property like that. Meanwhile, Muri, the head of the discipline committee, asked Fuei for her opinion of Medaka. Fuei described Medaka as someone who could be called pure and almost sacred in nature. Muri reflected that if the discipline committee ever had to deal with Medaka directly, someone so pure would be the most difficult to handle, since anger and justice could not easily exist together in her presence. One day, Fuei asked Harigane to deliver something to Muri in the music room. Harigane wondered why she had to be the one to do it. Fuei explained that the other members of the disciplinary committee were busy handling other matters, and since Harigane was often seen with nothing to do, observing how Muri worked might help motivate her. Harigane reluctantly accepted the task. Fuei smiled and mentioned that everything was being done for Harigane's own good. Everyone at the school already knew about the chosen of the chosen, the elite among the elite, the most exceptional of the exceptional, and the most merciless among the merciless. That title belonged to a group of superhuman students who were said to be capable of anything. They studied in a special class filled with model students who received special treatment and were not even required to attend classes regularly. Class 13 at Hakoniwa High School. The previous year, when Muri was only 9 years old, he had been selected as a Class 13 student, marking the first time the school had ever accepted a so-called monster child. The strict sense of justice upheld by Muri was embodied through his role in the disciplinary committee. That same day, Hansode greeted Medaka and commented on how striking Medaka's outfit looked. Medaka explained that she was carrying out a task requested through the suggestion box. She mentioned that she had received a complaint that the soundproofing in the music room had started to wear down. Medaka had also received many reports about orchestra sounds being excessively loud. Hansode had already heard about the issue and found it ironic that despite the number of complaints, the student council president was being offered food instead of solutions. Hansode became curious about what Medaka planned to do. Medaka explained that she intended to reinforce the soundproofing as much as possible and then adjust the orchestra's practice schedule accordingly. Hansode wondered whether Medaka planned to handle everything on her own. Medaka mentioned that Zenkichi Kaoki and Mokana were currently working on other requests. She added that the three of them were reliable, which made her own work much easier. Hansode laughed and remarked that the era of a one-person student council was already in the past. She then grew curious about who would eventually become the vice president of the student council. Medaka replied that she would prefer someone like Hansode to take that position. Hansode laughed and stated that she had no interest in joining any group or organization. She openly acknowledged that she disliked Medaka, and that Medaka disliked her as well. Medaka responded calmly, noting that all the current student council members admired her, which was exactly why she needed someone who could oppose her. Medaka admitted that her leadership was absolute in nature, but she had no intention of becoming a dictator. At that moment, Harigane was surprised to see Medaka and Hansode together. Both of them greeted her and asked where she was heading with the towels she was carrying. Harigane had actually hoped to avoid running into them. She explained that she was on her way to the music room. Internally, Harigane could not help but think about how Medaka always dressed in unusual ways, while Hansoda seemed to eat wherever she pleased. Meanwhile, Muri was already inside the music room, standing in front of the club members. He made an extremely harsh statement without realizing how extreme it sounded. Realizing his mistake, Muri quickly composed himself and introduced himself as the head of the disciplinary committee. He explained that he was there to issue penalties, as several clubs located near the music room had filed complaints about excessive noise that was disrupting their activities. Muri emphasized that he intended to enforce discipline in proportion to the disturbance that had been caused. The head of the music club was confused by the presence of such a young child in their room. One of the students explained that Muri was the head of the disciplinary committee, a student who had skipped grades and belonged to class 13. The club leader was shocked, having believed that Medaka was the only class 13 student who actually attended school. Still, the club leader felt there was no need to worry, assuming that Muri was just a child who could be persuaded easily. The music club leader explained that orchestra practice naturally produced loud sounds and suggested that it was unavoidable. He attempted to ease the situation with friendly gestures and promised to be more careful in the future, hoping for understanding. He even encouraged the other members to offer small treats as a sign of goodwill. However, Muri remained completely unmoved. He made it clear that excuses and shallow attempts at appeasement would not work on the disciplinary committee. His response was so intense and intimidating that the atmosphere in the room immediately changed. The music club members grew fearful as Muri continued to issue severe warnings, making it clear that once he had stepped into a room in his official capacity, the consequences would be serious and unavoidable. The students of the music club stood frozen, overwhelmed by the pressure of Muri's uncompromising sense of justice and authority. As soon as Medaka, Hansode, and Harigane arrived at the music club room, they were stunned to see how badly the place had been wrecked. Muri immediately grabbed the towel Harigane had brought along. Harigane was shocked by Muri's behavior. Even though the school committee allowed the discipline committee to use weapons, he could not imagine what kind of weapon could destroy an entire room like that. Muri wiped the blood from his face with the towel and asked why Medaka was there. Muri then stepped closer and made an inappropriate remark about Medaka's appearance, followed by an unsettling comment that crossed personal boundaries. Medaka felt disappointed that her first encounter with Muri had to happen under such circumstances, even though their goals were technically aligned. From Medaka's perspective, Muri had clearly gone too far. Muri assumed Medaka had come to resolve the situation peacefully and questioned whether Medaka truly believed she could make people understand and listen to complaints. According to Muri, anyone who was in the wrong deserved strict punishment. He believed that being too forgiving would only encourage repeated misconduct. In his view, justice had to be excessive to be effective. Harigane had joined the discipline committee because he agreed with that philosophy, but even he felt that Muri had crossed a line this time. Meanwhile, Hansode quietly warned Medaka that Muri was extremely dangerous. He was in the same elite class 13 as Medaka, and ever since Muri became the head of the discipline committee, the group had grown far more ruthless. Muri immediately scolded Hansode, telling him not to spread exaggerated stories. He claimed the discipline committee was a group that loved justice and peace, whose purpose was to fix what was wrong. According to Muri, force and weapons were merely tools to achieve that goal. Without warning, Muri launched a sudden long-range projectile attack toward Medaka's upper body. Harigane could not even follow the movement. He could not believe someone as short as Muri could move that fast. Muri said it was nothing more than a greeting and claimed he had held back to give Medaka a chance to avoid it. Medaka calmly stated that she had no reason to be attacked and no reason to dodge. Annoyed, Muri launched another attack from below, even faster than the first. Medaka stood back up and repeated that she had no reason to be attacked or to evade. Muri admitted that Medaka really did live up to the rumors, comparing her strength to a monster. Harigane asked Muri to stop, reminding him that the discipline committee had no justification to oppose the student council. Muri responded that throughout history, those who claimed to be pure always oppressed others in the name of justice. Harigane told him to stop making reckless statements and formally demanded, as a member of the discipline committee, that Muri cease using force. Muri laughed at Harigane's resistance and declared that justice and mercy could never coexist. One of them, he believed, had to be destroyed. He described himself as a god of corruption, while everyone else praised Medaka as a goddess of virtue. Where Medaka sought to help people grow, Muri intended to wither them away. Medaka expressed her hope that they could resolve their differences through discussion rather than conflict. Muri replied that it was already too late to talk, revealing that he had sent 3 enforcers to eliminate the student council members. Medaka was shocked by this revelation. Muri claimed it was the most efficient way to deal with someone like her. Medaka bluntly stated that Muri's actions were foolish. She then asked Hansode to handle Muri while she dealt with the chaos elsewhere. Medaka took off immediately, but Muri did not intend to let her save her friends so easily. He fired another invisible attack that struck Medaka's back, causing her to fall. Harigane became even more certain that Muri was using projectiles, ones whose trajectory he could not read at all. However, it turned out that what had fallen to the ground was only Medaka's uniform. Medaka sprinted at full speed to help her friends. She knew she might not make it in time, but she believed her actions were still meaningful. Students standing in the hallway barely noticed her as she raced past them due to her incredible speed. Muri prepared to chase after her, but Hansode stepped in to block his path. Muri wondered what Hansode intended to do. Hansode did not want to get involved, but Medaka had asked for his help. He pointed out that Muri could not act against him unless he had violated school rules. Muri then asked Harigane whether Hansode was the kind of student who ate meals in the school hallway. Harigane denied it. Hearing that, Muri glanced at his stopwatch and confidently concluded that Medaka's efforts would ultimately be in vain. Meanwhile, Mokana was working on her assignment in a quiet corner of the school grounds. Without warning, a student known as the so-called execution machine of the discipline committee, someone rumored to act without thought or emotion, moved into action behind her. He was named Rankaku. Just as Rankaku was about to strike, Medaka suddenly grabbed him and carried him outside the school building. Medaka believed that raising sharp claws toward a woman was not appropriate behavior. In her view, a truly strong knight understood when to hold back and when to put their weapon away. Rankaku panicked, and moments later, Medaka threw him onto a safety mat. People around were shocked by what they saw and initially thought something like a meteor had fallen. Their surprise grew when they realized that the girl who landed was actually the student council president. Medaka intentionally landed on the mat so she could meet Izagi. She asked Izagi to lend her running shoes since Medaka's own shoes had been damaged after running at extreme speed. After that, Medaka immediately took off running again. Time continued to pass, and only 2 minutes remained. Medaka then climbed toward the 3rd floor by scaling the wall, using the borrowed running shoes along with her claws. The students were stunned when Medaka accidentally broke through part of the 5th floor, since she had climbed higher than intended due to her overwhelming enthusiasm. Many students watched her in awe, while some casually remarked that this kind of feat was simply normal for her. At the same time, Kaki was carrying out his task on the 3rd floor. Behind him, a member of the discipline committee was pumping air into a bicycle tire. His name was Kanraku. Kanraku prepared himself to attack Kaki. Just as Kanraku was about to swing the bicycle toward him, Medaka suddenly landed on top of it. Medaka pointed out that none of the discipline committee members seemed to be using tools correctly, since a bicycle was meant to be ridden, not lifted as a weapon. She immediately rode the bicycle at high speed, leaving the students amazed. They had already accepted Medaka's extraordinary physical abilities as something natural. Meanwhile, Kaki looked on in confusion as Kanraku struck an awkward pose behind him. With only 1 minute left, Medaka was confident she could still finish in time. Suddenly, several students blocked her path. They claimed they were acting under orders from the vice head of the discipline committee, Fue. They asked Medaka to give up and return to the student council room. Medaka appreciated their concern, but for her, the challenge was not over, and she believed that none of her efforts were meaningless. She had never given up on anything before, and had already decided to fight with everything she had. When heavy objects were suddenly thrown in her direction, Medaka tossed the bicycle upward, slipped past the students blocking her, jumped back onto the bicycle, and sped away. Elsewhere, Fue was together with Zenkichi. She apologized for having him carry all of her boxes. They entered a room together as the remaining time dropped to 20 seconds. Zenkichi did not mind helping Fue, since he understood how overwhelmed she was with her responsibilities. Fue admitted that she was constantly busy monitoring students over and over again. Inside the room were several tools meant for harsh restraint, creating an unsettling atmosphere. As time ran out, Fue prepared to restrain Zenkichi. Fortunately, Medaka arrived at the exact moment, crashing through the door and stopping the situation just in time. Fue and Zenkichi were both knocked back by Medaka's sudden entrance. Medaka felt immense relief at having arrived before it was too late. All of her running, cycling, sneaking through obstacles, and even dealing with chains served as proof that she had crossed the finish line after overcoming a brutal course on her bicycle. Zenkichi was shocked by Medaka's appearance, and Medaka believed that her struggle had finally paid off. Fue, in turn, admitted that Medaka truly was far beyond what an ordinary person could be. Fue contacted Muri to report that every mission had failed. She had also reached out to Rankaku and Kanraku, and even the support unit of 40 students from the front line of the disciplinary committee had been defeated by Medaka. Muri laughed, genuinely surprised that the so-called female Godzilla had shown up right on schedule. He became curious about just how far Medaka's intensity could go and suggested that the disciplinary committee should withdraw for the time being. Muri realized that, at least for now, Medaka was not someone who relied entirely on peaceful methods. Fue agreed with that assessment, but there was still something that puzzled her. Earlier, Zenkichi had told Fue that Medaka was not trying to help the student council members because the people she was truly protecting were the disciplinary committee members themselves. Fue could not understand what Zenkichi meant by that. Zenkichi then explained that Mokana might appear quiet and reserved, but behind her stood two extremely dangerous individuals who already treated her like their own little sister. Up to that point, no one who had bothered Mokana had ever walked away unscathed. On top of that, Koki was also highly dangerous, and Nekami played a crucial role in keeping his violent tendencies under control. Since middle school, Koki had taken pleasure in destroying other people's lives. Zenkichi also admitted that he himself was far from harmless, describing his role as Medaka's guard dog, someone who posed a serious threat to any of Medaka's enemies, whether they were upperclassmen, teachers, or anyone else. He explained that if even one of his restraints were to break, Fue would not be able to remain standing afterward. Zenkichi urged Fue to seriously think about who Medaka was truly helping or protecting. Fue was convinced that Zenkichi was only bluffing, especially since the disciplinary committee had not officially been declared defeated by the student council. She believed that if Medaka had not interfered, the mission would have ended perfectly. In Fue's view, whether they won or lost, the disciplinary committee still suffered losses because someone always got hurt. However, once everything settled down, not a single member of the disciplinary committee had been physically harmed by Medaka. Even so, some of them were left with emotional scars due to Medaka's actions. From this, Fue concluded that Medaka was not the type of person who retaliated just because she had been provoked. She believed that Medaka was simply someone who tried to prevent conflicts from dragging on, whether within the student council or the disciplinary committee. Upon hearing this conclusion, Muri immediately destroyed his beloved phone in frustration. Harigane was startled by Muri's sudden outburst. Muri could not accept Fue's claim that Medaka was helping everyone, both allies and opponents alike. To him, Medaka was merely acting self-righteous, like someone pretending to be a god. Muri thought that if Medaka turned out to be a hypocrite, then he wanted to design a plan to force her into joining his side. However, if Medaka truly was someone pure beyond reproach, then Muri was prepared to eliminate her, even if it was all treated as nothing more than a game. He kicked the wall until it collapsed and burst into laughter, remarking that the soundproofing in the music room was clearly faulty if a single kick from him could leave such a massive hole. Muri then asked Hansode whether she would stop him if he chose to leave through the hole in the wall. Hansode refused, explaining that her duty was only to guard the nearby exit door, and that the large hole was outside her responsibility. Muri thanked Hansode and prepared to leave, but before doing so, he instructed Harigane to order all disciplinary committee members to return home immediately and to prepare alibis for any questions they might face the next day. From that moment on, Muri decided that he would plan and carry out a solo confrontation. Meanwhile, Medaka handed a ball to each of her teammates. She explained that these were not ordinary balls as they contained a special kind of power, and she referred to them as super balls. Medaka then attempted to explain the unusual technique Muri had been using. Zenkichi pointed out that Muri fired strange projectiles with highly irregular trajectories. Medaka was confident that the weapon Muri used was the same type of super ball. Hearing this, Zenkichi was visibly shocked. Medaka warned everyone not to underestimate the super balls, as they possessed incredible elasticity and rebound force. She demonstrated their power by lightly flicking one, causing it to bounce repeatedly off the surrounding walls. Zenkichi and the others panicked, overwhelmed by the unpredictable movements of the super ball. Suddenly, Muri appeared and praised Medaka. He admitted that he had been using that technique for over a year, yet Medaka had understood it instantly after seeing it just once. According to Muri, the super ball alone was not enough, so he had altered its material composition and optimized it for combat use. However, once its secret was exposed, it became nothing more than a childish trick or a simple magic act. Muri then revealed all of the super balls he possessed. Zenkichi never expected that after bluffing Fue, the head of the disciplinary committee would boldly invade enemy territory. He acknowledged that Muri's movements were just as fast as Medaka's. At that moment, Mokana suddenly asked who the not-so-cute little kid was, which shocked both Zenkichi and Koki and prompted them to scold her. Medaka was convinced that Muri had not come merely to show off the secret behind his technique, so she questioned his true purpose for entering the student council room. Muri asked Medaka not to be so cold, explaining that he wanted to become friends with her as fellow members of Class 13. He believed that the two of them were alike, both monsters in their own way, even likening them to demons. Ever since Medaka first transferred to the school, Muri had felt that they were like two sides of the same mirror. Medaka responded by stating that, if that were the case, then she must be his complete opposite. According to Muri, they seemed far too similar to truly move in the same direction. He was well aware of Medaka's reputation as someone who deeply loved humanity, even to the point where she firmly believed she had been born to help others. That kind of belief could not be dismissed lightly. Muri admitted that he admired Medaka for her noble heart, one that stood under the banner of truth and sought to save those who had gone astray. However, in his view, Medaka was also unfair because she chose to see only the good side of people. If someone truly loved humanity, then lies, betrayal, sin, ugliness, jealousy, immaturity, hatred, and conflict should also be embraced as part of it. If Medaka claimed to accept everyone, then she should not be reshaping people's minds so they behaved exactly as she wanted. To Muri, that was like focusing intensely on guessing a card when all the cards were already facing up. He believed Medaka genuinely took pleasure in her successes, while those she pushed into that mold did not feel the same way. Muri believed in confronting wrongdoing in the name of justice, yet he never felt that justice could simply be manufactured. Rules existed to keep people from losing control, but he did not believe they could change human nature itself. He openly admitted that he deeply disliked friendliness and companionship, love and self-sacrifice. He also rejected obligation and peace. Because of that, he believed he could enforce justice without bias. Muri was convinced that Zenkichi understood what he meant, though Zenkichi himself was not so sure. Zenkichi wondered why Muri had come to the student council room and spoken in such a manner. He suspected that Muri was either trying to persuade Medaka with his words or deliberately stalling for time. From Muri's perspective, even though everyone praised the student council as something exceptional, it was unreasonable to expect everyone to become extraordinary. What could realistically be expected was that everyone would follow the rules peacefully. Medaka pointed out that Muri was mistaken in two ways. First, the idea of her being a goddess of virtue was merely a label Zenkichi had given her, and she herself was not some kind of sacred being. Before she could move on to the second point, she immediately realized that the spheres Muri had thrown earlier were not harmless devices but modified explosive tools. She urged everyone to move away. Muri laughed at the fact that Medaka had noticed, but to him it was already too late, as his preparations were complete. He explained that the spheres were a type of Cinderella explosive trap, and that even one could shatter a wall into fragments. Mokana believed that if those devices activated inside the room, no one would be safe, including Muri himself. Koki was genuinely furious at what he saw as Muri's excessive and childish behavior. Muri merely remarked that adults could never fully predict what went on in a child's mind. He then wondered what Medaka would do next, whether she would side with him or plead with him to stop. Medaka had only just asked him to end it when Muri activated the devices anyway. A tremendous blast echoed from inside the student council room. The sound reached Habataki and his friends, who were practicing in the kendo hall, and they were convinced that Medaka had done something unusual again. Another blast followed, along with thick clouds of smoke, yet Habataki and the others laughed it off, assuming such chaos was normal whenever it came from the student council room. Before long, Muri emerged from the wreckage. He had survived because he was wearing a special disciplinary committee uniform known as White Tiger, also called Snow White. It was a cutting-edge scientific product made from pressure-resistant materials, strong enough to protect its wearer even in extreme accidents. The fabric was originally designed to withstand the crushing depths of the ocean, making it incredibly heavy and difficult to move in. Even so, Muri had not expected the impact to be so powerful that it would destroy the entire building. Muri then noticed that one of the devices had failed to activate, despite his confidence that he had adjusted everything correctly. He believed Medaka had doused it with water from a nearby flower pot to weaken its effect. He also observed that the window in front of him had shattered before the heat spread through the room. Muri was certain that Medaka had kicked the device away just before everything went off. He acknowledged that Medaka was exceptionally skilled at making use of any situation. He was truly shocked to see that every member of the student council had survived, even though he himself had been prepared to risk everything. More than anything, Muri desperately wanted to understand exactly how Medaka had managed to do it. It turned out that Medaka wrapped her friends inside a carpet to shield them from the shockwave of the explosion. Muri was baffled by how easily she managed to do it in such a short amount of time. Medaka had been positioned outside the carpet, putting herself at extreme risk of being hit by the blast. To Muri, Medaka's actions felt unnatural, especially since her abilities should have allowed her to save herself without difficulty. He laughed as he described Medaka as extraordinary yet unsettling, praising her strength and unwavering commitment to her ideals. Muri was convinced that Medaka would soon claim that there was no reason for them to fight since none of her friends were injured, and that everything would end with everyone living happily together. Medaka reacted with visible frustration toward Muri. She believed that he must have once been an innocent child who trusted in the goodness of people. In her view, something must have happened that twisted him into someone so cold and merciless. Even so, Medaka made it clear that she would not forgive him. Muri instinctively stepped back after hearing her words. Medaka admitted that she and Muri were surprisingly similar, and that she had never believed she was always right. Instead, she simply tried to search for better solutions. She reflected that truly helping others meant considering every possible outcome, never ignoring those who were hurt, allowing herself to be carried forward by circumstance, becoming too accustomed to helping, constantly feeling anxious and afraid, and understanding that being right was less important than trying to do what felt right. Muri dismissed this idea as meaningless, but Medaka believed he failed to understand her. She did not follow the ideals Muri clung to. Her ideals were rooted in never allowing her friends to be harmed. As she continued to move closer, Medaka made it clear that if Muri rejected her sense of righteousness, then she would allow her anger to fully surface. Meanwhile, Koki turned to Zenkichi and questioned when Medaka had changed into that state. Zenkichi explained that the change had begun back when she was in her first year of middle school. He admitted that he had once believed Medaka was simply a perfectionist. Zenkichi revealed that Medaka's fourth special ability was known as War God Mode. Once she entered that state, even he was no longer capable of stopping her. Zenkichi declared that Muri's story was nearing its end. Muri responded with laughter, showing no concern at all. To him, whether it was an evil spirit or a force beyond control, everything would eventually be reduced to nothing in the face of overwhelming power. Medaka and Muri finally began their confrontation. Medaka moved swiftly, launching a powerful strike toward him before he could react. The impact caused the explosive devices Muri was carrying to slip from his hands. Medaka's strike landed squarely against his upper torso with tremendous force. The devices detonated harmlessly in midair as Muri was thrown backward, crashing through a wall and landing far behind. Pain surged through his body from the sheer intensity of the blow. Medaka understood that the special suit Muri was wearing meant he should still be able to survive up to 3 direct hits from her at full strength. Medaka's fourth special ability was known as War God Mode. In this state, she unleashed her full power against Muri without holding back. Medaka believed that Muri had not suffered serious injuries yet because his body was protected by a special uniform. Even so, she advised him to stop pretending to be tough. If he felt embarrassed about backing down, she suggested that she might even forgive him. Muri arrogantly claimed that he did not feel any tickling or pain at all. He questioned whether what he felt was even real, since the material of his uniform was designed to absorb vibrations much like rubber. At that moment, Muri realized that Medaka truly lived up to her reputation as a monster in human form. Before losing control, Medaka issued a warning. She explained that she had mastered every kind of martial art, but she would not use those techniques on Muri. Each martial art was the result of human dedication, discipline, and respect, and such techniques should never be used when driven by anger. Because of that, Medaka chose to let her rage take over instead, abandoning human reason and fighting with raw, animal-like ferocity to bring Muri down. Muri laughed it off and claimed that he felt no fear after hearing what he considered a foolish threat. He was convinced that Medaka would be the one to lose this fight. Deep down, Muri admitted that his biggest disadvantage was being dragged outside, since his weapon worked far better indoors. For a moment, he thought it might be wiser to apologize, retreat, and return after making better preparations. However, that was not an easy choice, because the reputation of the disciplinary committee rested on his shoulders. To him, the disciplinary committee represented justice itself, and that belief gave him the right to discipline Medaka on the spot. Muri declared that if Medaka chose to fight like a beast, then he would fight like a human, like the humans Medaka loved and the ones Muri despised. He also offered his own warning in return, as a form of thanks for Medaka's earlier caution. Muri did not care whether Medaka was right or wrong, because in his view, only the victor could define justice. The fight began. Muri quickly realized that Medaka's punches felt like being hit by a truck, so he focused on evading them. However, Medaka adjusted her attacks instantly, redirecting her blows the moment Muri dodged. His body was sent flying, crashing back through the wall of the school building. Medaka was the kind of person who could accept others even if they were cruel or deeply flawed, but there was one exception to that belief. In the past, there was someone named Kumagawa. He was neither cruel nor malicious, but rather innocent and pure, like clear river water. At the same time, Kumagawa embodied many of humanity's worst traits. He never won against anyone and was destined to be a loser. Because of that fate, he became stronger than anyone else, capable of spreading suffering and disaster wherever he went, like a devil who carefully planned humanity's downfall. One day, Medaka encountered Kumagawa after his actions had gone far beyond what could be considered human. She kept reaching out to him, but in the end, she used her power to remove him from the school. Even after that, Medaka remained disappointed in herself for failing to save him. Many people were terrified when they witnessed that fierce side of Medaka. Her kindness was godlike when she helped others, but she could become terrifying when her friends were hurt. Medaka apologized for involving her friends in her ideals and asked them to return their student council armbands. From that point on, she intended to handle everything on her own. Before long, Zenkichi collapsed, unable to do anything to stop her. Medaka continued walking toward Muri, questioning whether his plan had been to lure her back into the school building. She described his scheme as cunning and wondered if that was truly the best he could do. Muri told her not to underestimate him. He had survived in class 13 at Hakoniwa High School for over a year, which made him far more experienced than Medaka, who had only been there for a few months. He claimed to have many allies who specialized in dealing with people like her and insisted that Medaka would regret her actions. Muri then launched his super balls, which bounced relentlessly around Medaka from every direction. Avoiding the non-stop barrage was difficult, but Medaka was prepared to endure the pain. She believed she could withstand the attacks just as Muri had endured hers. She kept running forward through the storm of super balls, but before long, her steps faltered and her body could no longer move. Muri laughed as he explained that he had not used explosive or super balls this time. Instead, he had used his ultimate trump card, the string ball. Thin strings shot out and successfully bound Medaka in place. This was Muri's final move, a technique he could only use once. The strings were no ordinary threads but Ariane fibers, made from the same advanced material as his special uniform. A single strand of this cutting-edge fiber could support up to 5 tons of weight. The threads were nearly invisible due to their extreme thinness, and Medaka's body was now trapped within thousands of them. Muri referred to it as a bird net. By then, he had exhausted all of his tricks after enduring 3 powerful attacks. Snow White had also reached its limit, and Muri's victory was as fragile as an egg balanced on the edge of a blade. Medaka realized that she could no longer underestimate Muri. Muri laughed, carrying himself with arrogance, and claimed that this was both his method and the justice he upheld. He stated that he always followed the rules before passing judgment on others. Muri remarked that even someone as reckless and untamed as Medaka still appeared striking while restrained. He crossed personal boundaries and damaged her uniform, insisting that justice would ultimately prevail. Medaka questioned whether that was truly the limit of Muri's ability. She then pushed against the threads binding her, catching him off guard. Muri warned that the threads were thin and razor-sharp, capable of slicing through anything that moved recklessly. Medaka responded by asserting that he would not be able to harm her body, as she had already endured countless wounds in the past. More than that, she believed Muri had already hurt her emotionally. Muri struggled to comprehend how far Medaka's ideals went. He realized that she had surpassed even what he compared to a colossal monster, since a true monster would never be able to hide its real nature. Medaka continued forcing her way through the threads, causing the structure supporting them to begin collapsing. She acknowledged that the threads themselves were strong, but the surrounding building could no longer withstand the pressure. Soon, Muri would no longer be able to restrict her movements. Muri was genuinely baffled by Medaka's actions. Medaka stated that she was the student council president and someone capable of mobilizing the entire high school. In an instant, the school building began to shake and crumble into ruins. Muri admitted that he had misjudged her. Medaka was not someone pure or saintly in his eyes, but rather a fierce and overwhelming force. Meanwhile, Mokana, Kalki, and Zenkichi witnessed the destruction of their school. Zenkichi was convinced that what they were seeing was the result of Medaka's suppressed anger. He explained that if Medaka's usual personality were stripped away, what remained was a brutal power, like a massive storm that destroyed everything in its path once unleashed. Zenkichi warned that if Mokana and Kalki chose to stay close to Medaka, events like this would happen again. He suggested that they step away from the student council, just as Medaka had advised earlier, to avoid even greater trouble. However, instead of retreating, Mokana and Kalki prepared themselves to move forward and support Medaka. At that moment, Muri's defenses had already collapsed, and his attacks no longer had any effect. His final attempt failed. As Medaka drew closer, Muri described himself as pitiful, believing there was nothing left for him. Even so, he claimed that he had not truly lost to Medaka. In his view, Medaka had not changed his heart or corrected his path, meaning she had not defeated him completely. He acknowledged that Medaka was stronger, but insisted that strength alone did not make her more right or more just. Even if Medaka overcame him in many ways, he believed he would remain unchanged, still harboring hatred toward humanity. Medaka, on the other hand, maintained that she continued to love humanity without needing to fix Muri, because she believed he would no longer have a future ahead of him. Muri laughed, calling the situation ironic. He pointed out that Medaka claimed to love humanity while standing on the verge of losing her own human side. To him, Medaka appeared restrained, as if she had spent her life enduring everything just to imitate what it meant to be human. He believed that when Medaka said she loved people and was born to help them, it was essentially a plea for others not to turn away from her. In his eyes, Medaka was not pure or holy, but a lonely soul burdened with excessive power. He believed that such a state would never be sustainable, and that Medaka would eventually collapse if she continued down that path. Muri admitted that he was only guessing that Medaka would soon abandon her humanity. He even claimed to feel concern for her, seeing how sensitive she was while carrying so much pain. Medaka told him that he did not need to worry, because she would never discard her humanity. Realizing this, Muri asked Medaka to erase him completely in order to protect the people she loved. He reminded her that she would remember that the one she eliminated was also human. If Medaka chose to eliminate a human to protect humans, then in his view, she would be no different from him. Muri deliberately continued provoking Medaka, attempting to draw out her anger. Medaka's emotions surged, and she prepared to strike him down. Fortunately, the other student council members arrived just in time and restrained Medaka. Zenkichi stated that Medaka had gone too far. Medaka asked them to let her go, and she also wondered whether they still wanted to stay involved with her. Mokana instead stated that she was fully prepared to remain involved alongside Medaka. Koki also expressed that he was willing to do anything for Medaka. None of them were willing to step down from the student council, because they had no intention of ever leaving Medaka on her own again. Medaka returned to her usual self, acting just like she always did. She even offered Muri a position in the student council, which naturally surprised everyone around her. Medaka admitted that she had always wanted a vice president who was willing to challenge her. In the past, she had offered that role to Hansode, but Hansode had turned it down. After giving it some thought, Medaka felt that Muri was actually a good fit for the position, especially after witnessing how he stood up to her. Zenkichi realized that Medaka had truly returned to her normal self. Muri firmly rejected the offer and stated that he was the head of the discipline committee. He also asked Medaka not to act overly familiar with every new person she met. Medaka then helped clear away the debris covering Muri's body. She explained that she always tried to get along with everyone and apologized if her behavior toward him had gone too far. Medaka added that Muri had helped her recognize her own shortcomings and expressed her hope that he would continue to support her growth. After that, Medaka planned to go to the hospital because she felt that many of her bones were fractured and some of her internal organs had been seriously injured. Her friends were shocked when they heard this. Muri still could not believe that, after losing control to such an extreme extent, Medaka had managed to regain awareness so quickly and act as if nothing had happened. In Muri's view, recovering from such severe mental damage should have been impossible. He realized that Medaka had not recovered purely through her own awareness, but because someone else had brought her back. Suddenly, Zenkichi approached Muri and acknowledged that Muri's assessment was not wrong. Zenkichi admitted that he himself was not a perfect example of anything, but he felt that Muri was, in some ways, too similar to Medaka in how strictly he judged things. In the end, Zenkichi believed that everything came down to personal perspective, and he personally preferred Medaka's way of doing things over Muri's. Not long after, Fuei and Harigane found Muri. He scolded them since he had already told them to go home earlier. Harigane, however, refused to leave Muri in that condition. She asked what had happened and inquired about Medaka's whereabouts, as well as what had occurred with the student council. Muri explained that there were no longer any issues and asked the discipline committee to stop monitoring the student council, since they were only trying to recruit members. He also stated that he no longer had any objections to their appearance or behavior. Muri then asked Harigane and the others to give their best effort, as he would not be able to take part in any confrontations for the time being. As news of the discipline committee chairman's absence began to spread, the school quickly became difficult to manage. Muri reminded Harigane and Fuei that peace at Hakoniwa High School now rested on their shoulders. Hansade and Fuei agreed to take on that responsibility. Muri was pleased with their response, but he remained worried about Medaka, believing that she did not truly understand what it meant to completely erase herself for the sake of others. Meanwhile, the principal of Hakoniwa High School, who was also Hansade's grandfather and was named Hakama, learned about Muri's temporary absence. He did not want to lose a single member of the 13 party, as he feared that such a loss could disrupt his plans. Hansade suggested that Hakama express his concerns through the school's suggestion box instead. The fight against Muri finally ended with Medaka's victory. However, as a result of that battle, Medaka suffered injuries that were far more serious than anything she had experienced before. Afterward, she went to the hospital for treatment and eventually had to stay there for recovery. Medaka's flawless record, never being absent, late, or skipping classes, something almost unheard of for a 13th grade student, was finally broken. That day marked the first time the student council had to operate without Medaka's presence. Mokana was busy with council work and asked Zenkichi about the budget documents for next month. Zenkichi estimated that the paperwork would be slightly delayed since he was still dealing with a few unresolved issues involving several sports clubs. Koki offered to help him out, explaining that even though Nekami was no longer part of the club, her influence and legacy were still deeply felt. That day, the three of them felt an unusual sense of calm. Koki began to wonder whether everything they had gone through so far had been caused by Medaka. He described it as a kind of detective paradox, whether a great detective appears because a case emerges, or whether a case emerges because a great detective already exists. Mokana asked what they should do next and whether they should intentionally stir up some kind of trouble. Koki immediately rejected the idea, saying they should never create problems just for the sake of having problems. He compared it to how some anime companies force licensing purely for profit, calling that kind of behavior pointless and foolish. Zenkichi admitted that Medaka did tend to cause chaos. She was always excessive in everything she did and found it difficult to stay calm. Mokana agreed with Zenkichi's observations but felt that calling Medaka a troublemaker did not fully fit. In her view, Medaka did not create problems, instead she dug down to the root of existing ones. To Mokana, Medaka was like someone nurturing plant seeds, watering them every day to help them grow, or like a gentle wind that calmed the waves of the sea. Koki argued that Mokana's explanation actually made things sound worse, since it implied Medaka was encouraging problems to grow. Mokana clarified that this was not her intention. Even if Medaka was at fault, it did not mean her actions were harmful. The problems themselves had existed from the beginning. No one knew what kind of hidden seeds were already inside people, and Medaka simply helped those seeds surface and bloom. Koki realized that this was just Medaka's natural way of being, and that was exactly why they chose to stand by her as members of the student council. Zenkichi stated that he had been forced by Medaka to join the student council, and that did not mean he wanted to stay by her side forever. He admitted that he chose to remain with Medaka only because he felt he had no other option. Koki was confused by why Zenkichi continued to cling to that mindset and warned that if Zenkichi did not let go of those thoughts, he would face serious problems in the future. Mokana then asked Zenkichi to check the suggestion box. Zenkichi commented that Mokana should not refer to it as a source of trouble, especially after everything they had already been through. That day, however, there was indeed a complaint inside. It came from Sasae, the president of the Shoji Club. Zenkichi and the others assumed that Sasae's side because Medaka was not there. Zenkichi wondered why Sasae kept holding her head like that, but Sasae told them not to worry about her. Earlier, Sasae had submitted a letter requesting help from the student council. She explained that the Shoji Club had recently gone through a leadership change, and she had just become the new president. Koki suggested that Sasae come back another time if she was still unsure, since Medaka was currently hospitalized. Sasae said that, on the contrary, it felt like she had come at exactly the right time. Sasae explained that she needed help finding a missing shoji piece from the club room. The Shoji club room was extremely messy. She pointed out where the piece was usually kept, and Mokana was immediately impressed by the shoji pieces, which were made from teak wood. Zenkichi asked whether teak wood was expensive. Mokana explained that teak was very costly and crafted by skilled artisans. Sasae said that the shoji pieces were an essential part of the club, and losing even one would be a serious issue. She asked them to help find it before the supervising teacher found out. The missing piece was the king. The three of them began searching together. Koki remarked that it was not surprising the piece had gone missing, given how disorganized the club room was. Mokana seemed to understand why Sasae felt it was the right time to ask for help. With Medaka absent, the student council felt incomplete, just like a shoji board without a king. Zenkichi suggested that Medaka might be more like a rook, or perhaps a lance, due to her straightforward way of thinking. Koki disagreed, saying Medaka truly fit the role of a king who could move anywhere, unable to stay confined, and even willing to charge alone into enemy territory. Zenkichi could not imagine a king like Medaka delivering checkmate on her own. Of course, even Medaka would need support from other pieces to do that. Koki wondered whether the three of them were truly worthy of being her rook and generals. Zenkichi teased Koki about where his usual sparkling confidence had gone. Koki said he had not lost his confidence, but acknowledged that confidence was exactly what they needed in order to rein Medaka in when she lost control. Mokana pointed out that shoji could not be played without a king, so they had to work together if they did not want to lose to Medaka. Without realizing it, the three of them moved at the same time while lifting a table, narrowly avoiding an accident, and then pausing in shared embarrassment as they realized how perfectly out of sync they had been. They kept working together, searching for the missing shoji piece while tidying up the room. Zenkichi gradually realized that without Medaka, the three of them might never have done anything together in the first place. Koki admitted the same thing, saying that if he had never met Medaka, he had no idea where he might be at that point in his life. Mokana added that without meeting Medaka, they probably would not have been cleaning the shoji club room together like this. All of them understood that Medaka was a mysterious person who often acted beyond normal logic. Staying by Medaka's side was never an easy thing to do. After they finished cleaning the room, they still could not find the king piece. Sasae arrived and remained confident that the king piece should still be somewhere in the club room. That made them wonder whether there might be another place they needed to check. According to Zenkichi, it seemed like they should expand their search to other locations. Koki suggested that maybe they could temporarily use a similar piece as a replacement, but Mokana rejected the idea because shoji pieces had distinct patterns and materials that could not be substituted so easily. After checking the shoji boxes, Koki concluded that the king piece had already been missing from the very beginning. Even in the magnetic set, only the king was gone, and the same was true for each individual set of pieces. They should have noticed it earlier when they first started cleaning the room. Koki suspected that this was not a simple case of something being misplaced, but something closer to deliberate removal. He asked Sasae for permission to search other places if necessary. Sasae looked hesitant and clearly worried. Koki then asked whether Sasae suspected Miri. Hearing that name, Sasae fell silent and stepped back. Zenkichi asked Koki who Miri actually was. Koki explained that Miri was a student from class 2 to 10, a special student just like Koki and Mokana. Miri was part of the special genius team. Koki was not surprised that the shoji club had a new leader, but what shocked him was that Miri was not chosen as the successor. Sasae said that Miri was the strongest player in the shoji club. From Koki's perspective, Miri did not have the qualities needed to be a club leader. The three of them soon went to see Miri on the school rooftop. Koki asked whether Miri knew anything about all the king pieces that had gone missing from the shoji club sets. Miri claimed he knew nothing about it and stated that he was no longer a member of the shoji club. He described the situation as tragic and said it genuinely hurt him to hear about it, but he believed that Sasae and the others would rather have a club without him than deal with his presence. Earlier, Sasae had explained that Miri was truly exceptional at shoji. Miri was effectively a professional level player, and some people even referred to him as a king. Being taught by Miri was considered an honor, but his attitude was often overwhelming to others. He frequently scolded beginners because he expected them to play at his own level. Miri stood at the top, but that did not mean he had the right to look down on everyone else. That was the view held by the former club president. Zenkichi realized that this was similar to a king losing his throne after ruling too harshly. Koki felt that Miri's actions were narrow-minded. In his view, Miri left the club because he was not chosen as the next leader, then took something important from the club as a form of retaliation. Koki also believed that Miri did not deserve to be called a shoji professional because of that mindset. Miri believed that weakness could not be blamed on others, but that people who refused to make an effort could be criticized. In the past, Sasae had asked Miri not to be too harsh with other members, reminding him that the shoji club was not a physically competitive sports club. Not all members were like Miri. Many of them did not plan to dedicate their entire lives to shogi and played simply because they enjoyed it. Sasae hoped Miri could understand that some students approach the game with that mindset and learn how to appreciate shogi as something to be enjoyed, not just mastered. From Miri's point of view, the shogi club members were only wasting his time. Koki reminded him that quitting the shogi club could negatively affect his status as a special student. Miri laughed at that warning, pointing out that it came from someone who had left the judo club. He said that he was just like Koki in not wanting to serve under someone he considered weaker. Miri also pointed out that the shogi club members had taken a long time to even notice that the king piece was missing since the last time they played. They had only realized that the Teakwood king was gone, and he was sure that Koki was the one who noticed that all the king pieces were missing. Because of that, Miri believed the club did not truly need a king piece, since they themselves did not seem to care enough to notice its absence. Koki decided it was time to leave and told Mokana and Zenkichi to go with him. From Koki's perspective, Miri had already revealed enough through his own words. Koki planned to hand the matter over to the appropriate teacher. Miri told him not to bother, saying that he never expected to walk away without consequences after what he had done. Zenkichi explained that the culprit had already been caught and that the missing items would be found soon. However, he also pointed out that if every problem could be solved with help from teachers, then the suggestion box would no longer be necessary and even the student council would lose its purpose. Koki agreed with what Zenkichi was saying. Zenkichi was confident that whatever Medaka decided to do next would directly challenge Miri. Because of that, he stepped forward and challenged Miri to a game of Shaji. If Miri won, Zenkichi would let him go without further demands. But if Zenkichi won, Miri would have to return all of the king pieces that had been taken. Miri reacted by thinking Zenkichi was completely out of his mind for daring to challenge him to Shaji. He never expected a beginner to challenge him in a game he took so seriously. Even so, Miri accepted the challenge and asked Zenkichi to arrange the pieces first. Not long after, Miri was visibly stunned by the setup Zenkichi created. Zenkichi laughed and wondered whether Miri had never heard of Mowari Shaji. Miri grew irritated and dismissed it as ridiculous, but Zenkichi calmly pushed back, explaining that the situation was Miri's own doing. They could only play that version of the game because there were no king pieces available. Zenkichi went on to explain that the Shaji Club members had already been worried because the king pieces were missing. He described Miri's actions as childish. Koki then added that, originally, Shaji did not even include a king piece. The piece made of jade simply ranked higher than gold and silver. The term king only appeared later, after the jade piece began to be written about more often. Because of that, promoting both the king and generals at the same time would naturally feel strange. Over time, the term king became more commonly used than jade general. According to Koki, if the jade general truly felt humiliated, it would not run away from the board but continue fighting to reclaim its position. In that sense, the ones who deserved criticism were those who gave up without trying. Koki believed that Miri should have blamed himself for backing down and surrendering so easily. He also felt that Miri had failed to understand Sasae's true strength, mentioning that even trusting Miri had left him unsure. Suddenly, Mokana brought up the idea that the Japanese phrase for arrogance actually originated from terminology used for the rook piece in Shaji. Zenkichi was caught off guard by Mokana's unexpected knowledge. Miri never imagined that student council members would end up lecturing him about Shaji, but that experience only confirmed the rumors he had heard. The student council truly cared about people, whether they were allies or opponents, even without Medaka being present. After that, the missing Shaji pieces were found inside the club lockers, and Miri returned to the Shaji club. He and Sasae began playing shogi together again. As usual, Miri was very strict with Sasae, to the point that it made her nervous, but this time he kept a calm smile on his face. That day, the student council members carried flowers as a sign that they had successfully completed another task from the suggestion box. Whether the problem involved classes, relationships, family matters, assignments, or personal struggles, students did not need to hesitate to submit their concerns. The student council was there to listen and to help resolve every issue the students faced.